a much brighter day compared to yesterday. Staying generally fine here through this evening as the rain starts to edge further northward, staying pretty soggy over parts of northwest England, North Wales. We'll see more showers developing through the night across parts of Scotland. Temperatures mostly dipping down to about 5 or 6 degrees across the south, staying up at 9 or 10 Celsius in this cloudy zone over northern England, southern Scotland. That's making for a grey start to the long weekend. A bit more rain to come here, although it is tending to fizzle out. Again, Highlands, western parts of Scotland generally looking dry and bright. There will be some sunny spells on Saturday across the south, but we are expecting a few scattered showers to develop through the afternoon, but with a bit more brightness, should feel a touch warmer.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is 12 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of May. You're with Emily Carver, and today, one day only, Gloria Teixeira.
It's great to be here with you, Emily. We've got a great show ahead. After a bruising day for his party in the local elections, we will hear from the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. We can do that straight away.
Last week I announced a historic increase in our defence spending to 2.5% of GDP because I believe as Prime Minister that's necessary to keep our country safe from the increasing threats that we face. And today I'll be speaking at a passing out parade and paying tribute and congratulating some of our brave armed forces personnel about the careers that they're about to embark on. We're very grateful to have their service.
Right. To the other questions, if that's okay.
to the election results overnight. These results show you're on course to lose the next general election, don't they?
Well, obviously it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. But we've still got lots of results to come as well. And there are also things that I would point to. Harlow, for example, where Keir Starmer held a rally just on Wednesday saying that was a place that he had to win to be on track to win a general election. That hasn't happened, and indeed we're still waiting for the result in the Tees Valley mayoralty just near to here, which is obviously a very important test as well.
Do you need to convince your party you can do better in a general election?
Well, as I said, if Keir Starmer was in Harlow on Wednesday saying that was a place that he needed to win in order to win the next general election, that hasn't happened. We still haven't got the results from places like Tees Valley with the mayoralty results, which again is a key battleground. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda. At the same time, what have Labour said? Well, they said that they are going to scrap the Rwanda scheme and, as far as I can tell, offer an amnesty to illegal migrants. That's no way to solve that problem, which is important to people right up and down the country.
OK. And just on to the climate vote this morning. What's your reaction to the government's climate plan being defeated in court today?
Well, obviously, I haven't seen the judgment, so I can't comment on that in detail. But with regard to net zero in general, what I would say is I'm proud of our track record. We've decarbonised faster than any other major economy around the world, cutting carbon emissions by 50%. But last year I set out a more pragmatic approach to get to net zero. Of course we believe in it, I want to get there, but we're going to do that in a way that doesn't saddle families with bills that we don't need to, and that's the change that I made. That will save families £5,000, £10,000, £15,000. I think that's the right approach. It's pragmatic, and given the overall economic situation, it's the right thing for our country. Now, other people are going to have more dogmatic ideological views about it, like the Labour Party, but I don't think it's wrong to saddle people with those costs, particularly when our record already on decarbonising our economy is so strong.
Prime Minister, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, well, that's what Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, had to say. He was trying to remain a little bit positive, wasn't he there, Gloria?
Well, I think they have done some really good expectation management, actually, in the Conservative Party. They have said, just look out. They've said that essentially these results are to be measured by the success, the Tory success in Tees Valley and in the West Midlands.
Yes.
And guess what? And guess what? The Labour, it's reported by the Press Association that Labour have conceded that Ben Houchen has kept Tees Valley, albeit with a reduced majority, and we know it's very tight in the West Midlands too. So good expectation management, but it's going to be a mixed picture, isn't it, Emily?
It's true. He kept pointing to Harlow, which Keir Starmer was apparently saying that he was going to achieve and win. But Rishi Sunak pointing out that he did not achieve that one, at least. But let's not pretend it's been a good day for Rishi Sunak. It certainly has not, and he said there will be many disappointed local councillors out there, Tory local councillors anyway. But of course we're going to be looking at some other election results, aren't we?
Yes, we're going to be up and down the country as the election results continues to come in. We've got a packed 3 hours, actually. Just mentioned the mayor in Tees Valley, that's Ben Houchen. He won on 73% last time. It will be reduced, but the Tory mayor stays in there. The East Midlands and York and North Yorkshire, they're new mayoralties, so that's going to be really interesting. And the North East will also be getting that in our time. Currently Labour, but they had a sort of battle over who was going to be the candidate, so the existing Labour mayor was barred from standing, and he's standing as an independent against Kim McGuinness, the official Labour candidate. Keep up if you can.
Well, it's all very exciting. It is all very exciting, I promise you, because the local council results, they're coming in thick and fast. Everything is going on this show. Between 12 and 3, so many results are going to come in, and they're going to shape, potentially, the results of the general election.
So joining us for the next few hours of our special local election coverage is none other than the legendary journalist, GB News' Alistair Stewart has come to join us. Alistair, you have witnessed so many of these elections. It's a good night for Labour, it's a good night for the Tories. If you were to put these results, these local election results taking place at maximum 6 months before the general election, if you were going to put them in a historical context, how bad is it for the Tories? How good is it for the Labour Party?
I think it is seriously bad for the Conservative Party, not least because Reform did very well indeed in Blackpool South and are beginning to pick up little nuggets of progress here and there. And I think that's because it boils down to the core challenge for Rishi Sunak, who we just heard from, and that is, what is he standing for? What does the Conservative Party stand for nowadays? I mean, you talk about legendary and been around for a long, long time, but I can remember the core philosophical political debates between Ted Heath and Margaret Thatcher, between the free marketeers and the monetarists and all of that lot. But I also lived through New Labour, as indeed did you, and I can remember lengthy conversations with the likes of Charles Clarke and John Reid. What does Labour really stand for after Michael Foot, and to get through to that position that saw Tony Blair not only win, but win for a decade? Be in no doubt at all today, anyone listening or watching us here on GB News, Keir Starmer is not a Tony Blair, and his Labour Party is not in the same position that Tony Blair's Labour Party was after all of that work that Mandelson and Clarke and Reid and the rest of them did. So I think that Sunak, funnily enough, in that little soundbite where he talked about defence spending having gone up, but Labour took Rushmore, not far from where I live, Hampshire, Surrey borders, which is a military area, Aldershot, home of the British Army. So despite increasing defence spending, it went to Labour. I think that is quite significant. I also agree 100%, and I said it when I was talking on the programme earlier on, with the Prime Minister, that Labour's failure to take Harlow is vital. Going way back over the years that I've covered these things, there's an area in and around North London, along the north banks of the Thames, that whoever wins the general election has got to do really well, and Labour have not done very well in those two areas. So I think, funnily enough, Sunak still has a fair bit to play for, although he's attending a passing out parade tonight for young soldiers. I don't think, in my own humble opinion, that Sunak will be passing out just yet.
Alistair Stewart, it is so good to have your lifelong experience and wisdom throughout the afternoon with us. We'll be back and forth to you as the news develops.
Absolutely, it is indeed. But last night, Reform UK performed admirably, some might say, in the Blackpool by-election, finishing less than 1% behind the Conservatives. That's got to worry the Tories. That's got to worry Rishi Sunak. But are they just hemorrhaging votes from the Conservative Party, the other leading right-wing party, the leading right-wing party, I should say?
Joining us now is the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who, I mean, goodness me, Richard, have you been to sleep?
No, to be honest, I haven't, but it's all right. Coffee and chocolate, and we're absolutely fine. You referred earlier in your introduction to excitement, and last night for us was a very exciting evening. It was neck and neck for about 2 hours. We thought we'd just pipped it and then not quite sure. But look, the reality is we've succeeded with our best ever by-election result by some margin, significantly ahead of our national polling average. Many people in the media have now got egg on their face. They said we couldn't do it. You know, we were a virtual party. Well, we've just proven them completely and utterly wrong. And look, the Tories vote collapsed from about 50% to 17%. I mean, that is a huge collapse. And we're the party that's on the up. They're the party that's on the way down.
Let's be real, though, Richard. All you're doing is making a Labour government more likely, far more likely, indeed. You're unlikely to get many MPs, if any at all, at a general election. So what exactly is the game plan here? Just destroying the Conservative Party's chances and putting a Labour government in?
Let's be very clear. They don't have a sort of arrogant entitlement to govern. You actually have to perform. We trusted them back in 2019 when we stood down. They betrayed the promises. They betrayed us on Brexit. They betrayed us on immigration. So they have to be punished. And look, there's no difference
But hang on, you don't have enough support, though, to do it properly, do you? You do have enough support to fill the House of Commons with your elected representatives. So what's the point?
The point is the two main parties are two forms of socialism. High taxes, high government spending, ever worse public sector outcomes, no growth, mass immigration. It's a disaster for the country. Democracy is better, Emily, when voters have got more people to consider, more debate to look at, more discussion, and that's what we represent. And frankly,
Richard Tice, I think we'd all accept that the country is going to see either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. I'm actually interested in your personal view. Who would you rather have in number 10?
I think they're both a disaster for the country, frankly, because they're both forms of socialism. And unless we change course, we are heading towards disaster.
Go on, Richard, pick one, if you had to. If you had to pick one.
With the greatest of respect, I'm not going to pick one. I think they're both disastrous. Look what Sunak's done to the country. We know that Starmer doesn't know what a woman is. I mean, the whole thing's just preposterous. That's why we need proportional representation. But look, unless we change course, then we're currently in the longest economic recession per person for 70 years. That will continue. We will continue to feel poorer, and the country will get worse and worse off. And frankly, it's got to change. We've got to stop mass immigration. We've got to stop this job-destroying rush towards net zero that's killing our jobs, killing our economy. And Britain needs reform in so many different ways, and that's what our policy agenda is all about.
Do you still chat to Tory MPs? Obviously, you have the defection of Lee Anderson, who is now a Reform MP. I am certain you would like more. You've said in the past that conversations are ongoing. Are you still hopeful of another Tory MP to defect to you before that general election?
Oh, I think that if the general election is in the autumn, then yes, I think there will be one or two, who knows, more defections. Obviously, they've got to meet our qualifications in terms of values and principles. But look, as individuals, there's lots of very nice people from all the different parties. But fundamentally, their policies have led us into a terrible place. And if you don't perform, you get fired. It's as simple as that, whether it's in a company or whether it's the people running the country.
Well, Richard, we know how popular the likes of Nigel Farage is among the Tory party faithful. I remember at the conference, gosh, he was mobbed. He was mobbed by all these Conservative members, which was very interesting to see. Could there be a plan somehow, to have a kind of hostile takeover of the Conservative Party, somehow get to the position where Nigel Farage or your great self are leading the Conservative Party?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got to deal with this general election. But what we are saying to people is actually, and you look at results coming in Sunderland in the northeast, for example, we beat the Tories 16 out of 25 wards. What I clearly believe is that now in parts of the country like the north and the Midlands, we are rapidly becoming the main real opposition to the Labour Party. And at this election, our ambitious target, we want to get more votes cast than the Conservatives. That's our ambition. It's it's a stretch target, but there's no such thing as a wasted vote. Vote reform.
Are any of your candidates on the left?
Say again.
Are any of your candidates? You've selected loads of candidates. Are any of them on the left? I mean, perhaps if you think if your target is to attract Labour voters, then presumably you're in chats with Labour MPs and saying, "Come on, you're welcome."
This is old school language. Our candidates are the candidates of common sense. Our candidates are the candidates of common sense to save Britain.
You have to have a bit of an ideological backing. I mean, where do you go with something like nationalisation of the railways? Where do you go with tax rates? Where do you go with all sorts of things? You need some kind of underpinning.
Well, if you look, we've got a 30-page contract that shows how you save Britain on our website, including, actually, with regard to things like some of the monopoly utilities, like water companies, there's a better model. We think of 50-50, 50% public ownership, 50% owned by British pension funds with decent private sector management. That's a much better model than the current model, which has led us towards, frankly, polluting disaster. So in certain areas, you might say that's sort of old school Labour. I just think it's common sense.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much, Richard Tice. We're going to leave it there. Leader of the Reform Party UK, who did pretty well up in Blackpool.
Well, I mean, the Labour Party got nearly 60% of the vote. I'm just going to bring in a reality check there.
No, nearly the second party. Nearly the second party.
The second party. I think it was like 10,000 to 3,000? I mean, you know, they got 3,000 each.
I mean, I do take Richard Tice's point, absolutely, that it is good for voters to have a choice. But the way our system works is that it's going to be Keir Starmer, it's going to be Rishi Sunak.
I know, and I don't think Reform are going to get the proportional representation that they seek. If you think about it, the Liberal Democrats have been campaigning on this for years. They managed to get a deal when they went into coalition with David Cameron, actually, to have a referendum. It was kicked out then. I just don't think it's going to happen. I'd be really interested in what people think at home, actually. Do you think the two-party system is broken? Because the way our electoral system works, you're going to get Labour or a Tory government or a coalition with one of those at the helm. Is that fair? Is that right? I quite like first past the post. I'm old-fashioned on that. Richard Tice would tell me I was old-fashioned.
I think so. Maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned too, but let us know what you think. Do you think we need to shake up our electoral system? I mean, every other country seems to do it very differently. Jennifer says, Emily, stop trying to get reform to step down. It's up to the people to decide, not you. Absolutely it is. I'm just putting the point to Richard that he's probably making a Labour government more likely.
Exactly. And you know, I'm on the left, but I feel for people who are on the right of politics, because it makes it really difficult when you have a split in the vote on the right. Of course it makes it easier for the party that I used to be an MP for to emerge in that.
Yes, and the Liberal Democrats aren't putting up much of a fight, at least in national polling, although at local elections they can do quite well. They can do quite nicely, can't they?
So we'll be hearing, won't we, soon, even though it's reported, yes, that, it's Ben Houchen, the Tory, has held on. But it will be the swing, and we'll bring you, by the way, when that result is formally announced, when the declaration is formally announced, we'll take you right there. But what will be interesting is not just that he has held on. It will be interesting to see what the swing is from Conservative to Labour in that race, because there's so many marginal seats up there.
It's quite interesting what that mayoral election will tell us. Is Ben Houchen just a competent, popular politician? There was lots of talk about the fact that he'd sort of moved, tried not to call himself a Tory too much.
Well,
tried not to
there's been a lot
hide the fact he's a Tory.
In the West Midlands too, Andy Street very much running on their incumbency. But, you know, you could say the same for Andy Burnham. Another big figure who doesn't really need the sort of Starmer Labour brand to ensure that he wins. They're being quite popular local leaders, but will their parties harm them? A bit is the truth in Ben Houchen's case, but his majority was so big.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible to take it out in one go.
What we do know, though, turnout has been pretty low. Did you go out and vote? Let us know. Let us know what you make of what Richard Tice had to say there. And, of course, Alistair Stewart. GBnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch, get involved in the conversation. We'll read out some more comments in a little bit. But coming up...
We're just moments away from that declaration I was talking about in Tees Valley. Labour have conceded to the Conservative Mayor, Ben Houchen. A big hold for the Tories. But what does the swing mean? We'll be discussing that in a few minutes.
This is good.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
In the studio, the chairman of the Royal Society of St George, that's Nick Dutt. Congratulations on St George's Day.
Thank you very much, and happy St George's Day to you and all the listeners, all the viewers.
What does it mean to you, Nick? What are you going to do today, for instance?
I'm attending an event in London for a society that celebrates St George's Day. But as a society, over the last few days, we've done a number of things. So a number of the branches around the country have held events to celebrate St George's Day.
Dare I say that's sort of passed under the radar probably for most people, and they sound like exactly the sort of things we ought to be doing as a country today. Eamon's campaigning for us to have a bank holiday like the Irish do. Eamon would come in on the 17th of March, head to toe, dressed in green, and doesn't understand why we English are so... I think it's self-deprecation, but he thinks it's just sort of, what, snobbery or... reticence to...
It's very hard to explain to somebody who's Irish, who celebrates their national National Day, why people in England don't have the same enthusiasm. That's the thing.
And I struggle with that. I absolutely agree. I think we should celebrate it. We should celebrate what unites us rather than what divides us.
Definitely, yeah.
And I agree. I think, and thanks to your channel, the tennis half event was broadcast, and we've this year seemed to have a much bigger awareness of St George's Day. But over the last decade or so, there have been certain headwinds. That certainly patriotism has been conflated with nationalism. It's made worse now as well because of the underlying trends, shall we say, in universities and schools to push a narrative that undermines all our history, what we've ever done. Now, yes, there are some bad things, but we've done good things. There's some great people.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, welcome back. It's 12:21. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain. This time with me, Emily Carver, but Gloria De Piero as well.
I am, and we've got some fantastic results throughout our airtime. So we'll be looking at where the surprises are, 2 new mayoralties. But obviously there was, well, not really a surprise last night, but there was a great Labour victory, regaining the seat in Blackpool South, which had been a Tory seat since 2010. A massive swing to Labour last night, albeit on a low turnout. And our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, is up there for us.
Olivia Utley, is she there? Yes, she's in Blackpool South. She's been following. Were you there overnight? Olivia, bring us the latest reaction. What's happened? What are people saying?
Well, it was an absolutely catastrophic night for the Conservatives. Not only did Labour win, which was very much predicted, the Conservatives only gained the seat of Blackpool South in the 2019 election as part of the Red Wall seats, and the Conservatives only held it with a majority of just over 3,000. So it wasn't really a surprise that Labour won, but it won with an absolutely enormous swing. There was a swing of 26% away from the Conservatives towards Labour. Now, that is twice the size of the swing that the Labour Party would need to win an overall majority in a general election. And it was also the 3rd largest by-election victory since the Second World War. Also, one more stat, it was the 6th by-election in which Labour has won majority with a swing of over 20%. Now, I'm saying all that because people often say that you can't sort of extrapolate individual by-election results into a general election, but in this case there have been so many by-election defeats for the Conservatives, one after the other, with these absolutely huge swings to Labour. There is certainly a pattern going on here, and it does feel as though Keir Starmer's path to Downing Street has never looked so smooth.
Last night, you could have seen, I find it very interesting to watch the sort of expressions on the various activists' political parties' faces. What sort of colour can you bring us from that count?
Well, I've been on from 6 this morning, so I wasn't at the count last night, unfortunately. Watched the wrap-up. But the mood in Blackpool this morning, I mean, the mood of the Conservatives in Blackpool was very, very low indeed. Now it feels like Rishi Sunak may just cling on. This morning there were people in Blackpool suggesting that perhaps Rishi Sunak was going to have to go. Now that seems less likely. Why? Because it looks very much as though Ben Houchen has managed to cling on to the Tees Valley mayoralty. It looks like Andy Street might have held on to the West Midlands as well. And the other thing that Conservatives were really afraid of was the Reform Party coming in 2nd place in Blackpool South. Actually, the Conservatives just about put them to the post. There are only 117 votes in it. But that sort of means that Rishi Sunak has a comfort blanket to cling on to. Yes, it was a disastrous night for the Conservatives. There is no getting around it. And it could be that when the dust settles tomorrow, the Conservatives have lost around 500 seats. But with those 3 almost wins, semi-wins, proper wins in the case of Tees Valley and probably in the case of West Midlands as well, it looks likely that Rishi Sunak will at least lead his party into the next general election.
And Olivia, are the Conservatives trying to argue perhaps that they only lost Blackpool South because Scott Benton obviously was forced to resign in a bit of a disgrace after that lobbying sting? I mean, it was under pretty poor circumstances.
It was. I mean, Scott Benton very much resigned under a cloud. It was a hugely embarrassing parliamentary scandal. But I think that's pretty cold comfort to the Conservatives. I mean, if you are selecting candidates who go down in under that sort of a cloud, and it's not the only Conservative MP who's been caught up in a scandal, that doesn't say very much for your party. I think saying we only lost because we had such a terrible candidate last time isn't a particularly good look. I also think that, you know, this is part of a pattern. Yes, if it was one MP who had been brought down in a scandal and they were replaced by the opposing party, you could argue that it was all down to that one MP. But this is a pattern that we are seeing time and time again. And sort of speaking to people in Blackpool this morning, no one really knew who Scott Benton was. No one was very interested in the lobbying scandal. What they were interested in is they didn't like the Conservatives anymore. Not particularly fond of Labour either, but they want to see the back of Rishi Sunak and his party.
Yeah, thank you so much. Talk to you again. Glad to hear that you weren't up all night.
No, she's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for us this morning. But Chris Webb took the seat and he spoke to GB News a little earlier this morning. I presume he's very delighted.
Incredibly humbled. We had a record result here tonight and I promised the people of Blackpool South I won't let them down. Day in, day out, people were telling me that they're worse off under this Conservative government. They've had 14 years of decline in Blackpool. Blackpool's a worse place under this government. They want change and they know a Labour government can deliver that. So I've been a community activist in the town for over a decade. I work with the food bank. I lead an award-winning mental health charity in Blackpool as chair of trustees. I know the issues in my community. I'm Blackpool born and bred. I see them day in, day out, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get on with the job. Keir's very popular in Blackpool. We've seen that. He's a friend of Blackpool. He's been here several times meeting young people, going into our deprived areas, and always gets an incredible reception. And this is another vote for his victory and why people want him in Downing Street.
There you go, Chris Webb. He says he's humbled by Blackpool South's decision to elect him.
The third time he stood for that seat.
Third time.
So it must be quite something to finally win it. Incidentally, and I think I've got this figure right, he is the first Blackpool South MP for 60 years to actually come from Blackpool. And I reckon probably we'd all agree that's probably quite a good thing.
Yeah, I think it probably adds something rather than takes away. It was nice to actually know the area, although, of course, candidates are always parachuted into whichever area they're needed or wherever they stand a chance of winning. Anyway, should we speak to an expert pollster from Opinion, Adam Drummond? Adam, thank you so much for joining us on this. Hard to know where exactly to start. I guess what people want to know is just how bad have the results been for the Conservatives, and do they reflect the general voting intentions of the public at the moment?
Yeah, so I would say one of the things that, just speaking sort of selfishly from a polling perspective, one of the things that by-elections and local elections are really useful for is telling us whether or not the picture that we get from voting intention polls is broadly sort of accurate. So Labour typically ahead by sort of 15 to 20 points, sometimes as high as 25. And the message that we get mainly from these local elections is that, yes, that is about correct. So in most of the cases where it's a straight sort of Labour-Conservative contest, Labour are gaining in exactly the kind of places you would expect them to need to gain in order to get a majority. Yes, we have cases like Ben Houchen in Tees Valley, where there's a very strong element of a personal vote there. And as you were both saying earlier, you know, even then, quite a significant swing away from the Conservatives. And then the case in by-elections, as Olivia was just saying, you have a series now of 20-point plus swings from Conservative to Labour. So there's really nothing in the results that really suggests that the general sort of consensus that Labour are probably going to win is in any way inaccurate.
So is it almost a foregone conclusion? Of course, people have to cast their votes. But if you were a betting man rather than just a polling man, you know, how much would you put on Keir Starmer being our next Prime Minister?
I'm really bad at betting, but it definitely is more likely than not. And as I said, in terms of what polling results have been telling us, it's been fairly sort of consistent since almost when sort of Liz Truss resigned, that Labour's been ahead by quite a substantial margin. And then we've had lots of electoral contests since then that have really sort of confirmed that. One thing that we have had over the last day, though, is a couple of interesting kind of nuances that have crept in. So there is some evidence, for example, of Labour struggling in some of these sort of heartland areas where there's a significant Muslim population, which possibly relates to their position around Gaza, and they're losing some votes to combinations of independent councillors and also the Greens, depending on where they are. The other interesting thing is how Reform UK are doing. And one of the ongoing sort of debates within kind of polling world and people who are sort of election watchers is whether or not the figure that Reform often get in national polls of about sort of between sort of 12 and 15%, whether that's real or not, because they have underperformed in lots of actual electoral contests, by-elections and so forth. There's evidence from where they have stood in these elections. I think they only stood in about 12% of seats. And their figure in Blackpool that they're not underperforming by as much as they were before. So there is something there, but it's not as high as they sort of should be doing if they really are at 14, 15% nationally.
This is pretty low turnouts in elections like this. So I guess there is an argument that lots of Conservative voters sat at home, said, well, I can sit this one out. It's going to be a general election in 6 months. And when it matters, I will go out. And that could totally turn everything on its head, couldn't it? Or not?
It is a valid argument, but historical precedent suggests that it's not. That's not necessarily how sort of things turn out. So there's quite a good bit of analysis done around, I think, the Nadine Dorries seat by-election. And the level of turnout among 2019 Conservative voters was virtually the same as it was among 2019 Labour voters, 2019 Lib Dem voters. So the sort of drop-off effect of people just not turning out in local elections is fairly sort of uniform across parties. It's not just Conservatives who are not turning out. And the other is that yes, election results are changed by possibly one party's voters being less enthused by that party. In, I think, the gap between 1992 and 1997, something like 1 million Conservative voters just didn't turn out in 1997. And we saw what the result was. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they come back on the day. It may be some comfort, but I don't think it actually should be that much.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your time, Adam Drummond, who is an expert pollster from Opinion. Not a betting man, though. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We are hearing that the Conservative Ben Houchen has been re-elected as Tees Valley Mayor, but crucially perhaps, with a reduced majority over Labour, at least in terms of the bigger picture.
But he will be delighted about that. There's been some chat, and I'm sure the Labour Party will be making this argument that the mayoral candidates, the Conservative mayoral candidates, sort of stood as Ben Houchen or Andy Street rather than as the Conservative candidates. But I think, actually, they could respond by saying that Andy Burnham is very much Andy Burnham too.
Yes, he's a personality. People know him as Andy Burnham before Labour, I think.
Yeah, so maybe it's unfair criticism by Labour.
Maybe, I don't know. What do you think? We're going to be up in Tees Valley very soon to get some more detail. How big was that swing to Labour, even though the Conservative held the position? This is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News. We're Britain's election channel.
And we bring you the latest news headlines now.
It's 12:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. Some breaking news first. Conservative Ben Houchen has been re-elected as Tees Valley Mayor, but with a reduced majority over Labour. In Darlington, he polled 4,000 votes, more than Labour's Chris McEwen. Lord Houchen was already won more votes in Hartlepool, Redcar and Middlesbrough, with just Stockton still to be announced.
Gentlemen, as Combined Authority Returning Officer appointed for the election for the Mayor of the Tees Valley Combined Authority on Thursday the 2nd of May 2024, I hereby certify that the total number of votes cast for each candidate was as follows. Houchen, Ben, Conservative Party candidate, 81,930. McEwen, Christopher Paul, commonly known as McEwen Chris, Labour and Cooperative Party candidate, 63,141. Thorley Simon Christopher, commonly known as Thorley Simon, Liberal Democrats, 7,679. The total number of votes cast was 152,750. The number of ballot papers rejected was as follows: 2 for want of official mark, 118 for voting for more than one candidate, 2 for writing or mark by which the voter could be identified, and 719 unmarked or void for uncertainty, leaving a total of 841 rejected ballot papers. The total number of ballot papers verified was 153,591, which gives us a turnout of 30.80%. I therefore give notice that Houchen Ben Conservative Party candidate is duly elected as Mayor for the Tees Valley Combined Authority.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'll try and keep this short. Nobody wants to listen to me. Go on. Firstly, I want to thank all of the staff, the returning officer, the police and everybody involved in the count. Thank you. And to everybody last night who came to the verification as well and was up very, very late doing the verification. Everybody in the polling stations, you've done an incredible job. And the returning officer in Stockton Council should be extremely proud of the way that they've run the election. So thank you for that. When it comes to the election, I just want to say that I am absolutely humbled by everybody that voted for me. Teesside is a place where I was born. I grew up, other than a very short sabbatical to Newcastle for 4 years, and then I came straight back. It's a place where I am going to be for the rest of my life. And to be re-elected for a third term in my home, in my community, is absolutely the greatest honour that anybody could ever give me. So I want to thank anybody that voted for me. It's a very, very proud day. I'm delighted. Thank you for giving me your backing. Thank you for backing me over the last 7 years, and thank you for backing my plan for the next 4 years. We've run a very positive campaign. We've tried to show a clear vision of what we want for our area. We've tried to show how we can change our region for the better, because let's be clear, there's still a long way to go, right? I'm not sat here pretending that everything's perfect, but we are making good progress. But we need to continue to tackle the problems that we have in our local area, and the plan that I've got in place is the right one. And for as long as I am there, I will continue to work as hard as I possibly can for everybody. And for those people that didn't vote for me, that's absolutely fine. I'll spend the next 4 years working doubly hard, doubling down, and I'll work even harder to make sure that I can secure your vote in 4 years' time. So I just want to thank everybody out there. But let's keep on going. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing for a better Teesside, Darlington and Hartlepool. Let's deliver more jobs, more investment. And again, I just want to thank everybody. It's a really humbling experience. Thank you so much. Thank you to Simon. Thank you to Chris. You've both run very strong campaigns. It's been interesting getting to know both of you, and good luck in the future. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of the volunteers. I can't stand up here and thank everybody because there is such a huge number of people across the whole region, friends, family and others who've given me support, who've been out campaigning, who've been trying to help us win this election. I'll speak to you all afterwards and thank you individually. But I also want to give a very personal thanks to my wife Rachel and my new baby Hannah, who absolutely I could not do this without. I mean, this has been a very difficult few months. It's been a really hard campaign. There's been a lot of spotlight on this election, which brings a level of intensity, but having Rachel as an absolute rock by my side, I absolutely could not do it without her. So thank you so much, Rachel. I owe this all entirely to you. Thank you to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm looking forward to some sleep. All the best. Thank you.
Well, there you go. There's the Conservative Ben Houchen. He has been re-elected for a third time as Tees Valley Mayor. So he had lots and lots of thank yous, didn't he, there? And lots of thank yous.
Indeed. He will be delighted to have held on reasonably convincingly. He joked that he was looking forward to getting some sleep. And just as somebody who has been a candidate, I don't think he will have slept much last night, so he will have been campaigning till 10 o'clock. Yeah. Then there is something called the verification of the votes overnight. If I'd have been the candidate, I would have personally wanted to see that bit.
Were you always looking over?
Yeah, spare a thought, for particularly the losing ones. They've had no sleep either.
So let's get you the detail as well. Let's get you the detail, because he got 73% of the vote last time. This time...
Yeah, 2021.
2021. Today, 53.6%. That's 81,930 votes. Not bad, considering how badly the Conservatives have been doing in most of these local elections.
I think that's pretty good to get over 50% of the vote.
Yeah, it's a big... Still, way over half of the votes Ben Houchen still got. The next was Labour with 63,141 votes, 41.3. So very much between the Conservatives and the Labour for that one. And the Conservatives have won. So
yes.
There you go.
And we'll be examining when those raw figures and percentages are translated into the swing. That's what the Labour Party will be looking at very closely. And it'll be interesting for all of us to see what that tells us, because there's so many seats that went from blue to red for the first time in 2019 in that region. So the Labour Party would like, I'm sure, to say something like, if we'd have replicated a swing, we would have won 10 seats in that region, for example.
It's funny how they do that. I wonder how accurate it is when they sort of extrapolate from one result to, you know, what it could look like on the general election map, and it's totally red, total wipeout of the Conservatives.
I know, these sorts of results saying Labour are going to have 450 seats. I don't buy it.
It could happen.
I don't.
It could happen. Worth also pointing out, apart from this Tees Valley mayor, which has gone to the Conservative again, Labour have retained control of Blackburn, but lost 4 seats.
Yes.
The Conservatives lost 2. Independents up 4.
Yes,
so what does that tell us?
It tells us that they'll both be a bit worried about that. There's clearly, and I don't know what the sort of demographic or the particular reasons are in that part of the world, but there is definitely some evidence of certain parts of the country where independents are doing well, did well last night, and we will find out more, because we're going to get loads of council results, actually, in the next couple of hours with me and Emily, and we'll be looking to see if we can extrapolate what's going on with the independents in certain parts of the country.
And Labour retained Swindon. So there you go, the Conservatives losing more seats.
They only won that at the last time, I think last year. They first took Swindon, so they're still doing well in Swindon.
So yes, a good day for Labour, but a very good day for Ben Houchen. So there you go. Clearly he might well be doing a thoroughly good job up there. But anyway, joining us now to discuss more on these results from Aldershot is GBNews reporter Ray Addison. Ray, tell us the reaction. You're out there in what looks like the town centre there. What are people saying?
Yes, well, good afternoon to you both. Well, this is Aldershot. Welcome to Aldershot, very much part of Rushmore Borough Council, Farnborough as well, nearby town, about 10 minutes drive down the road, part of that too. Population here around 40,000 people, and very much part of that blue wall. Rushmore Borough Council has always been blue, but today it has fallen to Labour. Now, that result coming through at around 3 a.m. this morning. Labour gaining 9 of the 13 available seats. Tories getting 3, Lib Dems getting 1. So that means that Labour now has control of Rushmore Borough Council by 1 seat. A historic event that they are, as they are describing it. Now, Conservative councillors are blaming, to some extent, reform. And if you go through and you take a look at where those reform candidates were sitting, and you add their votes to the Tories, then the Conservatives would have got 2 more seats, and obviously Labour would have had 2 fewer. As I said, Labour keen to highlight this as historic. They said the fact that they can win a military town like Aldershot is proof that they've kind of changed since the days of Jeremy Corbyn, and that connection has been reset. However, when I talk to people here on the town centre, the word I can use to sum it up is apathy. Hardly a single person that I've spoke to was even aware that a council election was taking place. I've managed to find 1 person who voted, a self-described lefty. He sat up all night watching the results. He said that he didn't so much vote for Sir Keir Starmer, he simply voted against the Tories because he's so disillusioned. Does he think that it's going to be much better because there's a Labour council rather than a Tory-run council? The honest answer, he told me was no. So it would appear, just from the very, very small sample of people that I've spoken to, that there has not been a huge sort of motivational shift of people who've come along and decided to turn this Tory council into a Labour one. It's just simply not many people have voted, and those that have just been bored with the current option that they have available. And the guy that I spoke to did say, however, that he thinks it probably is an indication that the Tory MP here, who's always been a Tory constituency, could potentially be at risk at the next election. Now, Labour had been laying the groundwork here. They've sent their Shadow Defence Secretary here, John Healey, and so he's been talking to squaddies as well. Obviously, there's a lot of squaddies here. However, the squaddies that I've been speaking to as well just weren't even voting, didn't even know about it.
Ray, fascinating snapshot. Thank you for bringing that to us. Ray Addison there in Aldershot.
Yes, that apathy, people just not bothering to get out and vote.
I mean, it's always been like that in local elections, hasn't it?
Yeah, yes, it has.
But it might be a lower turnout in the general. Perhaps lots of people... I was fascinated, actually, by the pollster saying that in 1997, when that big Labour landslide, that a million Tory voters stayed at home for that. I didn't know that before.
Yeah, well, I mean, judging by my local polling station, not many people were interested.
I do it by post.
Do you?
Yeah, organised.
You're not...
Oh, she's going to tell me off now.
You know, elderly or vulnerable.
No, but I just like to
as
make...
far as I know.
Oh, if only you knew, Emily.
Tom Harwood, who's usually here, he also does the postal vote. So there you go. Let us know. Do you do the postal vote? I like going in there, getting the little pencil, doing my little cross, but there you go.
It's 12:45. Got
it is 12:45.
Loads of more great guests, loads more exciting results. Straight after this break.
Hello, time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mishmash again today. Lots of places grey with some heavy rain around, but it's a brighter day in the south and it's another mostly fine day across northern Scotland. In between, though, low pressure and weather fronts are providing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some heavy downpours across parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, extending into the North Midlands. The odd rumble of thunder, maybe further north as well, parts of northwest England, southwest Scotland. But for much of northern Scotland, central Scotland, dry and fine. Warmest spot likely to be western Scotland, where we could get 22, 23 degrees. Elsewhere, a lot cooler with the cloud and the rain over these central areas, particularly chilly on some North Sea coast. But it is a brighter day across southernmost parts of England. Better chance of staying fine and dry here. And that dry, clearer weather will spread north as we go through the night. We'll keep outbreaks of rain going over much of Wales, the Midlands and northern England, parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland too. That northwestern corner staying dry and fine. With the cloud, that keeps the temperatures up in double digits. Quite a chilly start then to the long weekend in the south, but hopeful for a bit of sunshine here. Actually, generally, fine day tomorrow over South Wales, southern England and East Anglia. Drying up process over northern England and the Midlands too. But a grey day for much of the north. Some rain, although nothing too heavy. Again, the Highlands of Scotland doing OK for some sunny spells and temperatures here in the high teens, but cooler where it stays fairly dull. Bye for now.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:49. You're with me, Emily Carver, and Gloria Di Piero.
On local elections days, lots of big results still to come. And now we can speak to the... Oh, it's not on the article. Let me see if my memory... South Derbyshire Conservative MP.
Yep,
South
absolutely.
Derbyshire, Heather Wheeler. Heather Wheeler, one of my former neighbours. Nice to see you, Heather Wheeler. How are you? So we've just heard a result you'll be pleased about, that Ben Houchen has held on for you in Tees Valley. There is a new post, you don't need me to tell you, of East Midlands Mayor, which will be finding the results out today. There is no real incumbency factor because it's the first time that voters in the East Midlands have ever voted for a mayor. The polls favoured Labour. What are you hearing?
Well, it's been a really strange campaign up here because lots of people were using the tag 3 jobs Ben, where in fact the Labour candidate had 8 jobs. And, you know, you find this very, very frustrating that what would, you know, apparently what is sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander, but there you go. That's politics. So we're interested to see the turnouts. Some turnouts have been high, some turnouts have been low, and I think that's probably going to be the key factor, whether we get Ben in or whether we get Claire in.
I'm always sceptical about these mayoral positions and these elections. Why does the East Midlands need a mayor?
For starters, East Midlands has had the lowest input of taxpayers' money for years and years and years. Certainly our social services spend, our education spend, our infrastructure spend has been lower than other parts of the country. And so having this one person that can pull together what will be important for Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, the really big infrastructure projects, you know, if you try to build a bridge, you're not talking 5 million anymore. You're talking 18 million or 30 million. You're trying to do a new junction onto one of the motorways. Okay. That's just seems phenomenal amounts of money, and we need to get people together to do it. But the important thing with Ben was he was going to do exactly the same as Ben Houchen and Andy Street, and he wasn't going to charge a single penny of council tax. Of course, Labour are going to charge. I mean, in London, with Sadiq Khan's council tax is absolutely
Heather Wheeler. I know why you want why you want one of your own in. It's completely natural. I get that, but you might have Claire Ward, and we'll know that within a couple of hours, the Labour candidate. Just to sort of, I don't know, reassure, enlighten people at home, you will still work with any mayor, though, won't you? The reality is that the region will sort of come together, correct me if I'm wrong, and work with whoever is elected this afternoon.
I will certainly insist that the amazing deal that Ben Bradley negotiated with Michael Gove in local government about the future spend. I mean, just on its own, 170 million to sort out our roads, which everybody around here is screaming about the potholes. I will hold her feet to the fire if she wins. That money is going to be spent absolutely appropriately in Derbyshire.
Well, that's what people care about. They want their money being spent well and efficiently and on good projects, and for those projects that are promised to actually happen. Should we zoom out a little bit and look at what today has been like for the Conservatives as a whole? Bit of a bad day, really, isn't it? I mean, Rishi Sunak saying there will be hundreds of disappointed local councillors. They've been let down by the leadership, haven't they?
I'm not going to take that as the narrative for today, I'm afraid. Clearly, hugely disappointing for so many hardworking candidates, hardworking councillors. But when you pick up the number of Conservatives that have got in places like Peterborough, where Labour really, really ought to be slamming us. Harlow, I mean, for goodness sakes, we hang on to Harlow. Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer were there 2 days ago holding a rally because they thought they'd won it. So, you know, I feel, you know, as somebody who'd been a councillor for 20 years, both in London and up here in South Derbyshire, yeah, I really feel for my colleagues. But the bigger picture is really low turnouts.
Well, the bigger picture is, Heather, that Keir Starmer's probably going to be in number 10, and the Conservatives aren't doing anything about it, are they really? Failing when it comes to immigration.
If you look at the statistics that have come out today about the immigration numbers, absolutely phenomenally lower than they were just even a year ago. The fact we've already got one person on the way out to Rwanda, we've passed all the legal tests that we hope that.
Come on, he was given £3,000.
And that's and inflation down to 3.2, nearly down to 2%.
Okay.
If we can get the Bank of England
we can
to
do the list,
rates.
and I don't blame you for saying it. But given things are so good, according to your what you tell us and how you see things, why not call a general election?
I want to make sure interest rates come down. The Bank of England are being incredibly careful with this. It could be that it has to be.
OK, Heather, so an improved
down.
economy, interest rates down, and then you'll be happy for a general election. Thank you so much, Heather Wheeler. So sorry, we've come to the end of the hour. I'm sure we'll speak again very, very soon. We've got so much more coming up on the show today. More election results, more mayoral election results, local elections. What does it all mean? Well, that's the question.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mishmash again today. Lots of places grey with some heavy rain around, but it's a brighter day in the south and it's another mostly fine day across northern Scotland. In between, though, low pressure and weather fronts are providing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some heavy downpours across parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, extending into the North Midlands. The odd rumble of thunder, maybe further north as well, parts of northwest England, southwest Scotland. But for much of northern Scotland, central Scotland, dry and fine. Warmest spot likely to be western Scotland, where we could get 22, 23 degrees. Elsewhere, a lot cooler with the cloud and the rain over these central areas, particularly chilly on some North Sea coast. But it is a brighter day across southernmost parts of England. Better chance of staying fine and dry here. And that dry, clearer weather will spread north as we go through the night. We'll keep outbreaks of rain going over much of Wales, the Midlands and northern England, parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland too. That northwestern corner staying dry and fine. With the cloud, that keeps the temperatures up in double digits. Got a chilly start then to the long weekend in the south, but hopeful for a bit of sunshine here. Actually, generally, fine day tomorrow over South Wales, southern England and East Anglia. Drying up process over northern England and the Midlands too. But a grey day for much of the north. Some rain, although nothing too heavy. Again, the Highlands of Scotland doing OK for some sunny spells and temperatures here in the high teens, but cooler where it stays fairly dull. Bye for now.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh, dear.
Oh, my God. Are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously? It's not a wine. What is it?
Oh, my God. This is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
A man who worked for Sainsbury's for 20 years was sacked because he didn't pay for a few bags for life. Niamke Dofu put his shopping through a self-service checkout after his night shift, and CCTV showed him choosing the zero bags used option, and he was fired for gross misconduct. Well, joining me now to discuss this in our studio is the lawyer and broadcaster and great friend of the show, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, welcome to the studio.
Join you, Martin.
Certainly is. Now, on the one hand,
yes,
he was caught bang to rights on CCTV. It looked like, and the tribunal agreed, he stole the bags, but a 20-year career dashed on the rocks over 60p?
Yeah, I mean, the headlines are horrendous, aren't they? You sort of turn around on that sort of basis. So basically, there must be a valid reason for dismissing an employee, and you have to follow due process and so on and so forth. So they could look at about capability or conduct. And there has to be appropriate procedures set in place under employment law more to afford that sort of protection. What they say, however, if there's gross misconduct, you can be dismissed instantly.
Yeah.
Now, gross misconduct includes criminal offence like theft. And the reality is, in the law, if you take property, whatever its value, with the intent of permanently depriving the person of it, then that is theft. And so what they did, they looked at the CCTV footage, and the Employment Tribunal had a look at this sort of stuff, and the guy wasn't just pressed no bags, he went backwards and forwards and so on and so forth. So he knew he was getting bags. And what they sort of turned in, I always sort of trust comes in on foot, but leaves on horseback. And so what Sainsbury's are saying in their defence is, hang on, we lost trust in the guy, even though 20 years and so on and so forth. We need to make sure we have trust in our employees.
Do you think they've thrown the book at him, thrown the bag at him, to make all of us worry about us being watched by CCTV? Is this fella a scapegoat?
Oh, I think without doubt it's a story and a warning for everybody.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's exactly 1 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of May.
Yes, it is, and it's an election special this afternoon. We're up and down the country as the results continue to flood in.
Yeah, local council results are coming in thick and fast, as well as more mayoral results to come, while Emily and I are on air.
And it's been a truly bleak day for the Conservatives and Rishi Sunak when it comes to those local election results that we've seen so far. The former Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, says there's now no such thing as a Tory safe seat. Is it time up for the Prime Minister?
They will no doubt be delighted to hold on to Ben Houchen, the Tees Valley Mayor, and that has been declared about 20 minutes ago. Now, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, claimed victory in Blackpool as a giant step towards winning power. Is a Labour government pretty much guaranteed? What would it mean for the country?
Yes, what would it mean? And so far it's been a solid performance for Mr Ed Davey and the Liberal Democrats in the by-election results so far. The party's retained councils such as Eastleigh and adding to their tally of councillors too. We'll hear from Ed as well. It's interesting what you said, Gloria, when we were saying that it's been a bleak day for the Conservatives so far, because, yes, they will be clinging to that good result in that mayoral election in Tees Valley. Ben Houchen, a third term, which is no small feat.
No, it's a huge result, and I think the complicating or the interesting thing about these particular election results is you start the morning with Keir Starmer being so absolutely ecstatic. This is a terrible, terrible night for the Conservatives, a whopping swing for Labour to take back that Blackpool South seat after losing it to the Tories in 2010. You move forward the day 7 hours. We are... You know, the Tories are celebrating the holding of the Tees Valley Mayor. Now, he had a massive majority, Ben Houchen, last time, but of course he's held on, and Labour would dearly have loved to have taken that, but conceded defeat on that this morning. There is Andy Street. That's not going to be counted till tomorrow. And the Tories could well hold on to that as well. So what started off as a fantastic morning for Labour, by tomorrow afternoon, it could feel like a very different story, and perhaps Rishi Sunak is safe.
Well, yes, well, this is one of the questions we want to put to you, really. Do you think it's time up for Rishi Sunak, or do you think these results are just about enough to keep the baying mobs of the backbench Tory MPs, the right-wingers of the party? Are they going to be kept at bay? It does seem like the likes of Andrew Jenkins have sort of softened their tone a little when it comes to trying to oust him.
I think he's going to be the leader. I think he's going to lead the Tories into the next general election. Time for your news headlines.
Good afternoon from the GB newsroom at 1 o'clock. Your top story this hour. The Prime Minister says the local election results have been disappointing after Labour made significant gains. It comes after Labour also won the by-election in Blackpool South. Labour's Chris Webb took the seat, beating Conservative David Jones in second, following a by-election caused by the resignation of Tory Scott Benton. Rishi Sunak accepted that the results were less than ideal.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda.
The Reform UK candidate, Mark Butcher, came third, just 117 votes behind the Conservatives. Reform MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson, told GB News the party is making huge strides.
To get 16.9% in the by-election in Blackpool is absolutely fantastic. It's our best ever by-election result. I was thinking about 15, 16%. Just 100 or so votes behind the Conservative candidate. You know, with a few more resources, and a little bit, more campaigning. Maybe if we got more bodies up there, we'd probably pip the Tories on this one.
And Conservative Ben Hoochin has been re-elected as Tees Valley Mayor, but with a reduced majority over Labour. In Darlington, he polled 4,000 votes, more than Labour's Chris McEwen. Lord Hoochin has already won more votes in Hartlepool, Redcar and Middlesbrough, with just Stockton still to be announced.
I am absolutely humbled by everybody that voted for me. Teesside is a place where I was born, I grew up, other than a very short sabbatical to Newcastle for 4 years, and then I came straight back. It's a place where I am going to be for the rest of my life. And to be re-elected for a third term in my home, in my community, is absolutely the greatest honour that anybody could ever give me. So I want to thank anybody that voted for me.
Labour's local election gains across England and Wales include winning in key areas such as Rushmore in Hampshire for the first time. Labour also won Thurrock and Hartlepool, but the Tories held Harlow. In other news, a High Court judge has ruled that the government's climate plan is unlawful. Several environmental charities took joint legal action against the government, saying the strategy ignored the risk of missing targets. In his judgment, Mr Justice Sheldon ruled the government's plan was not justified by the evidence. Ireland's Prime Minister has played down a row over migration with the UK government on his first official visit to Northern Ireland as Taoiseach. It comes after Rishi Sunak offered Ireland the chance to join the Rwanda deportation scheme, rejecting Ireland's demands to take back asylum seekers who had crossed from the north. But speaking after a meeting with the First and Deputy First Ministers of Stormont, Simon Harris was quick to calm tensions.
There's a need for a sense of calm here. There's a need for a bit of a deep breath. We have a common travel area between the two islands. That's a common travel area that's in place for a very long time when both countries were in the European Union, and it's still in place now when one country is within the European Union and another isn't. And I'm determined to work as Taoiseach constructively to make sure that the common travel area is protected, that the common travel area is never abused.
And Defence Secretary Grant Shapps and senior military leaders have been sanctioned by the Iranian regime. 2 Royal Navy commanders who captained warships involved in shooting down Houthi rebel drones and missiles in the Red Sea are included in the list. One of them, Commander Peter Evans, is currently stationed in the Red Sea at the helm of HMS Diamond. And King Charles has been presented with an illustrated record of his coronation almost a year after the historic service. The King has praised the team which created the document, saying you deserve a very stiff drink. He made the comments with the Queen on Wednesday in his second public-facing event since his cancer diagnosis. The document follows a centuries-old tradition of creating a handwritten record of the monarch's coronation, but it's the first to use paper, not the usual animal skin, reflecting the animal welfare views of the King. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sophia. But welcome back. We're on Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
And we're talking about local election results. Lots to discuss with GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, Your main takeaways from the results so far? It's a bit mixed, isn't it?
How terrible it was for the Conservatives. It is still pretty terrible for the Conservatives, let's face it, but they have had a bit of good news, haven't they, in the last hour, with the news that Ben Houchen has held on as Conservative Mayor of Tees Valley. Now, OK, he had over 70% of the vote last time. That's down to 53. But he's still got a majority of nearly 19,000. So, of course, he is over the moon. He is stressing his local connections. He grew up in the area, says he will be there for the rest of his life. He hasn't campaigned, of course, on a Conservative ticket. He has campaigned very much on being Ben Houchen, bringing investment to the area. Levelling Up seems to be still alive and kicking there at least. But hey, Rishi Sunak, of course, will take as much credit for the Conservatives as he possibly can. So this will have given the Conservatives a boost. Of course, the West Midlands mayoralty looks to be on a knife edge. Conservative Andy Street defending that. We won't get the results of that till tomorrow. Too close to call, apparently, though some in Labour seem to think that Andy Street will hold on and that their vote will have been depressed first, of course, by the scandal of Birmingham Council going bankrupt, a Labour council, and also, of course, by many Muslim voters turning their back on the Labour Party because of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. So a mixed picture, but a little bit of good news for the Prime Minister, and possibly enough to keep those Tory MPs from sending in letters of no confidence.
Very interesting indeed, Catherine. It is quite funny, isn't it? Because we speak about the shy Tory vote. Lots of Conservatives don't like to broadcast the fact that they vote Conservative at elections. But now even the candidates are being accused of hiding their allegiances. I mean, he claims he forgot his blue Conservative rosette at the count. Do you think he purposefully left it behind?
Well, who knows? But I mean, Andy Street, too, has very much campaigned on being Andy Street. And I don't think it will do him any harm at all for the fact that when Rishi Sunak went to Manchester to tell Manchester that HS2 was not, in fact, going to Manchester, Andy Street was very, very cross. There was some talk of him resigning. He did take a firm stance. So they are both their own men. Let's see what happens with Andy Street. Of course, we've got lots more results from local council elections, police and crime commissioners and mayoral elections to come over the next day. And the London one, we won't get that until tomorrow, but it is expected that Sadiq Khan will stay on as London mayor there.
I think the Tories have been quite clever, Catherine, in saying that the key results for them are keeping Ben Houchen in Tees Valley and keeping Andy Street in Birmingham, which is certainly possible, although we won't know until tomorrow. Are Rishi Sunak's enemies or opponents within his party, is it all over? Are they sort of given up? He's going to lead them into the election because you've got to. It's one thing saying that, but you've got to have discipline. You've got to actually get behind him. Otherwise, there's no point in carrying on scrapping, but keeping him in position. What's your assessment of that?
If I had to make a call, I would say that he's going to be OK. Having said that, very dangerous to make predictions after the chaos we've seen. And the Conservative Party is capable of pretty much anything. I mean, they took out Boris Johnson, who, of course, had got them that 80-seat majority. They took out Liz Truss after just 7 weeks. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's very likely. I mean, one of the only MPs that's admitted to putting in a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister, Dame Andrea Jenkins, she came out this morning and basically admitted that she didn't think there would be that much of a move against the Prime Minister. I think if the Conservatives had come second to reform in Blackpool South, if they'd lost Tees Valley, if they go on to lose the West Midlands, things might look a bit different. But at the moment, it's sounding like, and certainly most Conservative MPs I speak to think it would be complete madness to change leader yet again, given they've been through so many and given that we are only a few months from a general election. But the Conservative Party chairman, Richard Holden, saying to MPs, you know, just take the weekend, take a bit of stock. So I think number 10 will be hopeful, but they're not quite out of the woods yet.
Well, you never know, do you? Mad things happen all the time in our political system. Thank you so much, Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, there with us. Sadiq Khan won't find out whether he's clung on to the London mayor role till tomorrow. That's a big one. Everyone's heard of Sadiq Khan. You may not have heard of some of these regional mayors, but everyone's heard of Sadiq Khan.
And what's interesting about Sadiq Khan is he's been consistently ahead in the polls, though the poll lead over the Tories, Susan Hall, has narrowed, but he polls below the Labour vote in London, whereas Susan Hall, the Tory candidate, polls ahead of the Tory London Tory vote, if that makes sense. So that makes it quite interesting. So he's not got the same... he's a bit more controversial, shall we say, Sadiq Khan.
He's very divisive. You think he's very divisive?
Well, he has a divided policy, the ULEZ. Yeah. And I think that has divided people. I think even as a person he is, Gloria. I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say. Go on, Gloria, you know it's true. You know it, she knows it's true. I think that is down to the ULEZ, which has been controversial and actually cost Labour winning the Uxbridge by-election.
Lots of ULEZ, and we are going to be talking to Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, a little later, because he took a rather strong stance on Twitter to try and get people not to vote for the Conservative candidate in London, Susan Hall. I mean, Susan Hall just isn't as well known. She just isn't as well known.
But I think that could be beneficial.
Work in her favour. Could work in her favour, potentially. Sadiq Khan's putting out all this stuff saying, oh, there's been a very low turnout, that makes it better for the Conservatives.
I did a bit of knocking yesterday and apathy was quite big where I was knocking.
Oh, Gloria. Doing some knocking for Sadiq. The lovely Sadiq. We'll find that out tomorrow, though, so you'll have to keep waiting, although we'll let you know if we hear any whispers about which way it's gone.
Well, in the last hour, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, has spoken for the first time since the local election results began to be announced. This was just before the Ben Houchen result, though, but here's what he said a little while ago.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda.
That was the Prime Minister speaking before the Ben Houchen result. I was just saying to Emily there, I bet he wishes waited till after that to record that clip. But there you go. Now to make sense of the results so far, we're joined by the founder of Electoral Calculus, Martin Baxter. Martin, tell us your big takeaway from the results so far and whether actually you lot, the pollsters, did you get it right?
Well, the straightforward story is really the apparent story, which is that the Conservatives are losing votes and losing seats in all directions to Labour and to the other parties. So Blackpool South was an interesting one in comparison with the polls, because that was very much in line with what we predicted on Wednesday for Blackpool South, just based on MRP polling and the national polls. So in a way, that is the headline is bad for the Conservatives, because that confirms that the polls are roughly right and that Labour are points and points ahead. And at the moment in the polls, Labour are about 20% ahead, which is larger even than Tony Blair's margin of victory over John Major in 1997. So the polls have consistently had very bad news for the Conservatives. If you're looking for a little bit of silver lining for the Conservatives, yes, there is the Ben Houchen and Teesside, and also the fact that Blackpool was very much almost spot on the poll predictions, whereas by-elections normally are even more against the government than polls are, because it's sort of a free shot for people to protest and vote against the government. So there's a tiny bit of a silver lining there, but that's really the difference between catastrophic and disastrous for the Conservatives at the moment. On the other hand, across the rest of the local election results, they're still coming in, so there's still quite a lot many more results to come. But the results so far, the Conservatives losing seats, and that's going not all to Labour, only some of it to Labour, but to the other parties as well. So the story continues, as the polls say, of Conservative unpopularity and Labour sort of grudging gains for Labour, but not overwhelming for Labour yet. But on the back of the polls, it would be Labour are doing very well, and Keir Starmer, I'm sure, will be pleased with today.
Assessment just to say that Welwyn-Hatfield remains under no overall control. Conservatives losing 10 seats there, Labour gaining 8, Liberal Democrats 2. Very interesting. Yes, Labour with 20 seats in that particular council, but no overall control.
They'll be hoping to take that, won't they, at the next election? Well, in Hatfield, I think that's Grant Shapps. Is that Grant Shapps? Sorry, I was bringing you back, Martin Baxter. Apologies.
Sorry. So Labour will be particularly pleased by gains in the south and southeast of England, because that's areas where, back in the days of large Conservative majorities, they were almost expelled from those areas outside London. So winning councils in the south of England is very good news for Labour. And also, we'll see if they can take some back in the Red Wall as well. But let's not forget that other parties are doing well as well, and that really the story overall is the Conservatives repelling voters who are going in all directions, both leftwards towards Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens, but also rightward, further right towards Reform. And we'll maybe see more of that story later on this afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin Baxter from Electoral Calculus. Now, I know that you're available to join us again throughout the afternoon, which is fantastic.
Yes, great assessment there of what is all going on. Keep your views coming in. Please do. gbnews.com/yoursay. We will come to some more in a little bit. But coming up, the broadcasting legend, it is Alistair Stewart himself. He joins us live in the studio. We're going to continue on with our special local election coverage. You're with GB News. We're Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. It just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pension Scheme." The fight for these veterans and their families lives on, because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1:23 on May the 3rd, and you're with me, Gloria DiPiero, and Emily Carver for some exciting election results, which will keep coming. We've got another couple of big ones in the next hour or so. But joining us now to discuss the local election results from Aldershot is GB News reporter Ray Addison. Ray, big night there.
Yeah, results came in about 3 a.m. this morning, and Labour very keen to paint this as a historic victory for them. Well, why is that? Because Aldershot, of course, is an army town, a garrison town. It's been home to the Parachute Regiment over the years and around 70 other organisations as well, military branches too. Now, of course, this very much is part of the Blue Wall. As one person was saying to me, at the general election, all the soldiers are going to come out and they're going to vote Tory. However, at the moment, Labour is celebrating its victory because it gained 9 of 13 available seats that were up and available in this local council election, Rushmore Borough Council election, and now have control of that council. Now, Conservatives are partly blaming Reform. They're saying that if the Reform candidate hadn't been on the ticket, then those votes, most of which would have gone to them, would have meant that they would have won. I've added up the votes. That's actually correct. Assuming those votes go back to the Tories, then they would have had 2 more seats, and I do not believe Labour would have had that majority. But Labour saying that if they can win a military town like this, then that really shows that the old associations, maybe going back to the days of Corbyn as leader, have been wiped clean. Now, quite a low turnout, only around 34%, and quite a lot of apathy from people here in the town centre. Very much a struggle to find anyone who had actually voted. 2 people that I did manage to find did say that they voted Labour, but admitting that they didn't so much vote for Labour, despite describing themselves as lefties, but they just voted against the Conservatives. And so although Labour very much keen to big this up and say it's an indication of things to come, from the people that I've spoke to here, it's really hard to tell.
Ray Addison in Aldershot, thank you very much indeed. We'll chat later, no doubt.
That's a bruising defeat, isn't it, there, for the Conservatives?
I should actually say, speaking of bruising defeats for the Conservatives, it is sort of sources, Labour sources are reporting there's a new position today, which is the East Midlands Mayor.
Another mayor.
Nottinghamshire, she loves them. Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, and it is reported that the Labour candidate, Claire Ward, has won there. As soon as we get confirmation of that, of course, we'll bring it, but there are various sources, good sources on social media.
Yes, I should say that I don't have a particular problem with the East Midlands having a mayor. I'm just sceptical about these mayoral positions anyway. I think they just end up promoting, you know, second, third-rate, fourth-rate politicians, and they have quite a lot of power sometimes. But hey, we're each to their own. Let us know, what do you make of mayoral positions? Perhaps you love a mayor.
The mayoral thing, just lovely to hear Ray capturing it perfectly there in Aldershot, and to underline the brilliant contribution you had from Martin Baxter just a moment ago, the number cruncher, where he talked about Labour's grudging gains. And I thought it was intriguing that Ray Addison, who is a brilliant reporter, said, here I am walking around the streets of Aldershot, a Labour gain in Rushmore, never heard of before, blah, 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 blah. And very few putting their hand up. The swing that dare not speak its name didn't happen in Harlow. If Labour don't really harvest in a lot more of these councils in the south of England, as Ray called it, the Blue Wall, then Starmer is talking out of the back of his head when he talks about a seismic change, because it ain't happened yet, and there's a lot more to come before he can really seriously say it. On the mayoralty, interesting that the spin doctors have been incredibly busy. Labour were talking up the fact that Hoochin had won Tees Valley, and they're also, I think, talking up Andy Street's chances in West Midlands. And in his acceptance speech, which I thought was brilliant and well worth people looking out for, we're running it online. He talked about the economy, and as Bill Clinton's famous advisor said, it's the economy, stupid. And Ben said what we really need in our neck of the woods is we need more investment, we need more jobs, and don't forget that growth was one of the key things that Rishi Sunak pledged when he took over as Prime Minister. Ben knows that. One of the things I hear from a lot of people, particularly in their early mid-20s, youngsters of my own two older children, are talking about the sheer incompetence of government, the fact that nothing seems to work. Well, Ben is the kind of guy who makes things work, and he knows that if you haven't got a vibrant economy with growth, then it's not going to create any wealth to distribute. So that's where Sunak needs to really keep his fingers crossed that American interest rates might come down. They were talking about that this morning. Then British interest rates need to come down very quickly to get that feel-good factor coming back in. And Ben is the man to lead that rallying cry, in my view.
Alistair, it sounds like you think there's all to play for.
I don't think there's all to play for. I think there's a lot to play for. And that interview that you both ran at the beginning of your segment with the Prime Minister, where he said he was attending a passing out parade for young soldiers. He said it was disappointing, not only for the Conservative Party, but there were pockets of disappointment for Labour. He mentioned Harlow, which I've mentioned times and time again. My own view is that we've talked a lot on GB News about the cost of living crisis, and there is a limited amount that the government can do about it. But we know historically that it is only a government that brings in that feel-good factor that will win. It's what Blair did as well. It's what Cameron did. And don't forget, crucially, Cameron, who everybody had written off in the 90s, came back initially via a coalition, but then won an overall majority. He sits round that cabinet table with Rishi Sunak now, and Rishi would be well advised to listen to Cameron on tactics and strategy.
We'll always listen to Alistair Stewart on tactics and strategy.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, they could do with some of this spirit, gung-ho, you know, get to the job. It's true that Ben Houchen, he talks a lot about growth, investment, business, infrastructure, getting things going.
So does Andy Street, so does Andy Burnham. I mean, come on. I mean, Labour now, the Press Association now actually reporting that Labour has declared victory in the East Midlands, a new post, so none of that incumbency that we've been talking about, which the existing mayors have been able to fight on their record or not to study.
A quick one, can I just...
yes, you can always come in.
East Midlands is particularly interesting because there's a Labour split there as well, because the candidate, Jamie...
that's the North East. That is the North East.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, but you're right, there is a split there. The Jamie Driscoll, the existing
Jamie Driscoll, right. I stood as an independent, so that would be particularly interesting to watch. But if Labour have conceded Andy Street's victory, then that really will just hint at a smile on Sunak's face, because Street would echo almost everything that Ben said in his acceptance speech.
We'll have to wait till tomorrow for the official West Midlands results, but the East Midlands, the reports are that Labour has taken that. We'll bring you the formal declaration, which should be in about half an hour.
Yeah, we'll bring it to you as live, but let's quickly get your headlines. We'll be back in a tick.
It's 1:33. I'm Sophia Wansler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. The Prime Minister says the local election results have been disappointing after Labour made significant gains. It comes after Labour also won the by-election in Blackpool South. Labour's Chris Webb took the seat, beating Conservative David Jones in second, following a by-election caused by the resignation of Tory Scott Benton. Rishi Sunak accepted that the results were less than ideal.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda.
Conservative Ben Houchen has been re-elected as Tees Valley Mayor, but with a reduced majority over Labour. In Darlington, he polled 4,000 votes more than Labour's Chris McEwen. Lord Houchen has already won more votes in Hartlepool, Redcar and Middlesbrough, with just Stockton still to be announced. Labour's local election gains across England and Wales include winning in key areas such as Rushmore in Hampshire for the first time. Labour also won Thurrock and Hartlepool, but the Tories held Harlow. And a High Court judge has ruled that the government's climate plan is unlawful. Several environmental charities took joint legal action against the government, saying the strategy ignored the risk of missing targets. In his judgment, Mr Justice Sheldon ruled the government's plan was not justified by the evidence. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2560 and 1.1686 euros. The price of gold is £1,830 and 91 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,212 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mishmash again today. Lots of places grey with some heavy rain around, but it's a brighter day in the south and it's another mostly fine day across northern Scotland. In between, though, low pressure and weather fronts are providing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some heavy downpours across parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, extending into the North Midlands. The odd rumble of thunder, maybe further north as well, parts of northwest England, southwest Scotland. But for much of northern Scotland, central Scotland, dry and fine. Warmest spot likely to be western Scotland, where we could get 22, 23 degrees. Elsewhere, a lot cooler with the cloud and the rain over these central areas, particularly chilly on some North Sea coast. But it is a brighter day across southernmost parts of England. Better chance of staying fine and dry here. And that dry, clearer weather will spread north as we go through the night. We'll keep outbreaks of rain going over much of Wales, the Midlands and northern England, parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland too. That northwestern corner staying dry and fine. With the cloud, that keeps the temperatures up in double digits. Quite a chilly start then to the long weekend in the south, but hopeful for a bit of sunshine here. Actually, generally, fine day tomorrow over South Wales, southern England and East Anglia. Drying up process over northern England and the Midlands too. But a grey day for much of the north. Some rain, although nothing too heavy. Again, the Highlands of Scotland doing OK for some sunny spells and temperatures here in the high teens, but cooler where it stays fairly dull. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M90 northbound in Perth and Kinross at junction 12, that's the Broxton roundabout. Queue in traffic on the M1 into the roadworks northbound in Bedfordshire around junction 10, Luton Airport. And we've got several sets of delays on the M25, some of which are due to roadworks. Firstly, on the M25 clockwise in Hertfordshire, we've got 4 miles worth of queues just before junction 23, that's for South Mims. Also on the M25, this time in Surrey, there's slow traffic in both directions between junction 5 for Sevenoaks and the Clackett Lane services. Queues anti-clockwise on the M25 in Buckinghamshire, that's between junction 17 Maple Cross and 15 for the M4. And we've also got the usual slow traffic on the M25 clockwise in Berkshire just before junction 15 for the M4. And that's the latest traffic and travel.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Right, it's 1:37. This is Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily and Gloria. Now, a big result. Keir Starmer says it's a massive win in the Blackpool South by-election. He says it's seismic even. Seismic.
Here is the Labour leader speaking this morning.
It is, of course, the most important election result in the sense that it's a direct message to the Prime Minister, because this is a parliamentary seat. That's a 26% swing. That's a huge swing, and it's the 5th swing of over 20% in by-elections that we've had in recent months and years. So it's not a one-off. No denying the mood of the country now is for change, and I think it's for the Prime Minister to allow the country to express that change now in a general election.
Well, that was Keir Starmer. He reiterated the fact, well, it's a big swing. He said that multiple
definitely a big
times.
swing, but,
definitely a big swing.
You know, low turnout, as by-elections always are.
Low turnout, what does it mean? We're joined by political correspondent Olivia Rutley, who's in Blackpool. Ah, Olivia, you've changed location again. Love it. Olivia, Keir Starmer...
She's not going far from that pleasure beach, though, is she?
Not far from the pleasure beach. Keir Starmer says this is a big win, seismic, huge swing he's talking about. That's all true.
It is. It's absolutely true. There has been an enormous swing away from the Conservative Party towards the Labour Party, a swing of 26%. Just a few years ago, that would be pretty much unheard of, and yet now it's happened 5 times in recent months and years. This is one of 6 swings, actually, over 20% that we've seen since the 2019 general election. And as Keir Starmer said in that clip there, this isn't some sort of anomaly. This is happening time and time again. There is a pattern, and it does look as though Keir Starmer's route to number 10 is looking pretty smooth at the moment. The only fly in the ointment, perhaps, for Labour is that turnout was low. Turnout is often low in by-elections, but it was very low here, just 32%. And it sounds as though turnout was pretty low across the country. Similarly, in local elections, although there was a big swing away from Labour, although Labour lost seats up and the Conservatives lost seats up and down the country, in about half of cases, Labour didn't actually win them. They went to independent, and the councils went to no overall control. That suggests perhaps that Labour is winning not because people love what Keir Starmer is offering or because people have fallen in love with Keir Starmer the man, but because they are fed up with the Conservatives. How much does that matter to the Labour Party? Right now, probably not very much. Keir Starmer's ducks are all in a row. We are looking at a catastrophic, almost definitely, Conservative defeat in the general election. Perhaps in a few years' time, later down the line, it will be a problem for Keir Starmer that people aren't particularly enamoured by his policies. But at the moment, for whatever reason, people are voting Labour, and that is enough.
Conservative MPs who haven't been as loyal as they might be to their leaders in recent years, but it seems, am I right to say, they have accepted that Rishi Sunak's going to lead them into the next election. The grumbling seems to have diminished. There's not much of it around today.
I think so. I think what's happened is, although, of course, this has been a really disastrous night for the Conservatives, it hasn't been quite as disastrous as some were predicting. The Rebels were going to act if one of a number of things happened. One of those things was Ben Houchen losing Tees Valley. There was a big swing away from the Conservatives, but Ben Houchen just about held on. Another sort of sticking point for the Rebels would have been if Reform had come second to Labour in Blackpool South. Well, that didn't quite happen either. In fact, the Conservatives beat Reform only by 117 votes, but beat them nonetheless. Thirdly, it looks as though, although we don't have a certain result yet, that Andy Street will be holding on to the West Midlands. If he had lost that seat, then that probably would have been a moment for the Rebels to start pushing ahead. Andy Street may have only held on to the West Midlands seat because the Gaza issue seemed to have split the left vote in half, and it looks as though there wasn't a huge turnout for Labour there. So it's not a particularly pretty picture for the Conservatives. Even those 3 sort of partial wins aren't particularly impressive, but it probably is enough to give a sort of comfort blanket to Rishi Sunak, and for now at least, to see the Rebels off.
Yes, I mean, there have been some vocal Tory voices in the media who haven't been too friendly to Rishi Sunak. Kwasi Kwarteng, for example, the former Chancellor under Liz Truss, he's saying there's no safe seats anymore for the Tories. He was basically talking up how badly they're doing. Is that just sour grapes?
I think almost all Conservative MPs are happy to acknowledge now, well, not happy, but content to acknowledge that the Conservatives are doing very badly indeed. It's more that the rebels have realised that probably whatever happens, the Conservatives are going to do badly, and it isn't the moment to get rid of Rishi Sunak. The rebels, most of them, believe that even without Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the Conservatives would probably lose. They've felt that it might have been worth sort of deposing him at the last minute in order to mitigate the damage and try for a relatively healthy minority, a relatively healthy opposition. They think maybe now they might be able to get a sort of relatively healthy opposition at the next general election, but they are pretty certain they're going to lose. There isn't much enthusiasm wherever you look for Rishi Sunak. It's only a question of, well, it's probably better to hold on to him than to have a fourth Conservative leader in as many years.
Yes,
Is.
morale is a bit low, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. Thank you, Olivia Utley. Excellent analysis, as ever.
It is interesting. I guess it's just because it's getting closer and closer to that general election date, whenever it will be, and there just isn't the time to depose another leader, is there?
I just think
look
that they
ridiculous.
actually, if you're going to keep him, you have to get behind him.
Yeah.
That's your best chance.
But they need to do that. They've been elected as politicians in the House of Commons, at least try and put on a face. At least try and seem enthusiastic about your prospects and talk it up and all this. Go for it. Why not?
Exactly.
What have they got to lose?
Hate divided parties.
What have they
just
got to lose?
vote on it until the next election. Who knows what will happen? Nothing's ever guaranteed in politics.
Also, I do think
know that as, having spent so long in the Labour Party.
I do think Kwasi Kwarteng was trying to stick the boot in.
Well, he said it before Ben Houch, and we were saying, weren't we?
Yeah.
Sort of these results are coming in waves. Terrible for the Tories, better for the Tories,
And what are Labour going to do about this whole Gaza issue? I mean, it's certainly affected Oldham, that vote. So we'll see. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But up next, we're going to have a look at the Liberal Democrats. How did they perform in the local elections? They normally do quite well. So are they breaking through?
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I don't think you can go and watch a Shakespeare play unless you already know it. It's almost like you have to understand the story and the characters, and perhaps have even done a bit of reading into it. Because if you went completely blind, especially in today's world where we don't speak in that kind of way, it is, I think, probably a bit alienating.
But Dawn is saying it is alienating at the moment because of the lack of representation.
You know what, the actual phrasing they use, right, OK, the disproportionate representation propagated white, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender male narratives. I'm sure there's people sitting in a room going, what's the most ridiculous thing we can come up with today?
Yes.
But really, just chuck all these words at it, cisgender, and it's just insane. Of course, Shakespeare was what it was back in the day, and that's why it's mostly blokes and they're mostly white.
And lots of speculation that he was actually gay, isn't there? Because he never really saw Anne Hathaway very often and stayed away a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe he was a big
He might have
gay
been
icon.
transgender for all I know. I mean, I don't...
Biggins, I'm looking at you.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that goes for the profession too. I mean, I do think I mean, I remember seeing Macbeth in London with Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, and it was one of the most exciting evenings ever. And it was a cold night at the Donmar Theatre, outside and inside, and that gave it atmosphere. There are certain things, and you go along and see something else, and you think, I'll walk out in the interval.
Yeah. Macbeth is a sexy play, though.
Let's talk about, there's so many. Can I live to be 100?
Oh, this is depressing.
I think it is depressing. I like to stay here now. I don't want to live to 100.
don't say that.
I'm right behind you.
I don't even want to. My father died at 63. That'll be me gone this year.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. The time is 1:48 on May the 3rd. Lots of election results
Friday.
coming from... What did I say?
No, I was just adding. I was adding that it's Friday. Happy it's Friday, why not? Yes, but we're not getting a lot of results till tomorrow, but there are lots coming through today. In this specific
Two big ones tomorrow, isn't it? We've got the
tomorrow.
West Midlands Mayor and the London Mayor, but you're going to get the East Midlands Mayor very soon and the York and North Yorkshire Mayor pretty soon and the North Eastern Mayor. I've got it.
Yes, all of those.
Hopefully we're going to tell you about all of those in the next hour or so.
Lots of regional mayors and lots of analysis here, but the Liberal Democrats, they deserve a mention. It's been a fairly modest day for them so far in today's local elections. Shall we speak about the party's performance with the former Lib Dem chairman, Mark Oaten? Mark, what's your assessment of the Liberal Democrats and their performance this time around?
I mean, so far, I'd say they wouldn't be popping the champagne yet. Not that they tend to have champagne. It's more like cider and beer with that lot. But I think what they will be... A little bit of Prosecco, maybe, a little bit cheaper. I think what they'll be looking for is looking to see what happens in these big rural seats. You've got to remember that where the Lib Dems are hoping to make the big breakthrough are seats in the southwest where you've got polling stations in the middle of nowhere, in pubs, in the back of cars and vans. It takes forever for these votes to be counted. A lot of those seats are still to come in. So far, I think they'll be happy. At the moment, they're looking like they're taking more seats than the Conservatives on the night, so that puts them in second place. But I would suspect that they're a little bit nervous. They want to see whether they can actually make the gains in Elmbridge, Tunbridge Wells, Woking. So it's a little bit too early to say whether it's a fantastic night, but it seems at the moment to be steady as you go.
Do you know, I think you might have solved the voter turnout problem. Polling stations in pubs. Wow. Anyway, that sounds marvellous. Can we have it everywhere? I was going to ask you, Keir Starmer is quite popular in the sorts of seats where your party would have traditionally been popular. It's called the Blue Wall now, but people quite like him down there, perhaps more so than in some of the northern working class bits, actually, of the country. How problematic is Keir Starmer for you?
I think that he's popular is actually helpful. I'll tell you for why. What we found in 2019 was that a lot of people that wanted to vote Lib Dem were really scared of Jeremy Corbyn and a left-wing Labour Party. And so that meant they stayed with the Conservatives. It was just too risky to try anything else.
Right.
They're not scared of Keir Starmer. They actually would be prepared to vote for the Liberal Democrats without the fear that nationally maybe Labour would get in. So in many ways, it actually helps. What I don't find when I knock on doorsteps is any particular enthusiasm for Starmer in the way there was back in '97 for Blair. But I think it helps the party that he is at least seen as a moderate, safe figure.
Mark, the Liberal Democrats, at least their social media team, are making a lot of the fact that now Lord David Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, former Prime Minister, now has a Lib Dem councillor. This is in Chadlington and Churchill ward in West Oxfordshire. Yes, they're having a bit of a giggle about that, but is that significant?
Well, it's Jeremy Clarkson as well is going to have a Lib councillor in West Oxfordshire. Look, those are the kind of seats where you would expect them to be making a breakthrough at this stage. And they're also not necessarily in Cameron's seat, but moving forward, it's those kind of profile seats that the party would hope to take at the next general election. So what the analysts will be looking at in the party is, do these council election results map in terms of transferring over to target seats at the next election? The answer, it seems at the moment, is yes. No big surprises. They're also holding seats like my old parliamentary seat in Winchester. They've held onto the council. They're making gains also in Watford. where I was a councillor. They've made gains there. So they're on target in the seats that they need to be on target for to take at the next general election. And that's what will matter most to them tonight.
Mark, I want to talk to you about tactical voting. We know there is an anti-Tory section of the public who just will vote for either Labour or the Liberal Democrat, depending on who they think is most likely to depose the Tory. Now, how helpful is it if in some of these seats the Liberal Democrats are putting leaflets through people's doors saying only the Lib Dems can beat the Tory here, and meanwhile Labour are putting leaflets through those same people's doors saying only Labour can beat the Tory here? Don't you have to sort of come up with some arrangement? Otherwise the voters are going to get quite confused, actually, and you might end up getting the Tory re-elected.
Yeah, my experience is that if you've lived in a constituency for, 5-10 years, after a while, you pretty well know, because you've seen the results last time, who is in second place. And so most voters who want to get rid of the Tories, and at the moment it would seem like 80% of the population do, they're pretty savvy. They can look and see who came second, and they generally will go for the party that came second. I think the challenge for the Lib Dems is, can they get that message across in those individual constituencies when at the same time, day in, day out, always seeing polls showing the Labour Party so far ahead and the Lib Dems just on 8 or 9 or 10%. So you have to work really hard in those seats to say, hang on a minute, I know Labour are high in the polls, I know the Lib Dems are low, but in this particular seat, we came second last time and we can actually overturn the Conservatives. That's quite a hard message for the Lib Dems, but they're great on the doorstep. They pump out these leaflets, they have activists, and that's ultimately what wins them many, many seats. Because, of course, if you think about it, based on 8 and 10%, they wouldn't win any seats.
Absolutely. Mark, we're going to have to leave it there. Mark Oaten, former Lib Dem chairman, great to speak to you. We've got loads more coming up. We're going to show you that rather shocking tweet from the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. I'd like to get your opinion on it.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mishmash again today. Lots of places grey with some heavy rain around, but it's a brighter day in the south and it's another mostly fine day across northern Scotland. In between, though, low pressure and weather fronts are providing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some heavy downpours across parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, extending into the North Midlands. The odd rumble of thunder, maybe further north as well, parts of northwest England, southwest Scotland. But for much of northern Scotland, central Scotland, dry and fine. Warmest spot likely to be western Scotland, where we could get 22, 23 degrees. Elsewhere, a lot cooler with the cloud and the rain over these central areas, particularly chilly on some North Sea coast. But it is a brighter day across southernmost parts of England. Better chance of staying fine and dry here. And that dry, clearer weather will spread north as we go through the night. We'll keep outbreaks of rain going over much of Wales, the Midlands and northern England, parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland too. That northwestern corner staying dry and fine. With the cloud, that keeps the temperatures up in double digits. Quite a chilly start then to the long weekend in the south, but hopeful for a bit of sunshine here. Actually, generally, fine day tomorrow over South Wales, southern England and East Anglia. Drying up process over northern England and the Midlands too. But a grey day for much of the north. Some rain, although nothing too heavy. Again, the Highlands of Scotland doing OK for some sunny spells and temperatures here in the high teens, but cooler where it stays fairly dull. Bye for now.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is exactly 2 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of May.
And it is, of course, an election special today. We're up and down the country. Election results continue to come in. Local council results, mayoral elections, something for everyone.
Yeah, we got a couple of results, we think, coming up in our airtime and some great interviews too.
We do indeed. Now it is a truly bleak day for the Conservatives in some parts, in some results. For Rishi Sunak, former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng stuck the boot in a little bit and says there's no such thing as a Tory safe seat anymore. Is it time up for the Prime Minister, or on a couple of wins will that do him well?
And Keir Starmer claims victory in Blackpool as a giant step towards winning power. Is the Labour government pretty much nailed on? What could it mean for the country? We'll be talking to Labour's West Streeting later in the show.
Big question. And Conservatives, they're blaming Reform for splitting their vote. We're going to get some more reaction on that in just a few moments. What's the game plan for Reform here? They're taking votes away from the Tories, taking votes away from Labour still, maybe?
Now, as expected, predicted, Labour have had a pretty successful night in the local elections and also in that parliamentary by-election in Blackpool South with a 26% swing. Soon, we will be speaking to the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting.
Yes, we will indeed. And one question I want to ask Wes, I'm sure Wes will want to talk about all these stonking victories in the local elections and some of the mayoral candidates, but I want to ask him about this shocking tweet that he posted in support of Sadiq Khan. He said, a win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over. Susan Hall's campaign has been fought from the gutter with dangerous and divisive politics. London, we cannot let her win. Vote Sadiq. Gloria, what do you make of this?
I know Wes well. I like Wes very much. I think he's a very, one of Labour's most impressive figures, and I was really shocked. This tweet, which was posted yesterday or the day before, it just struck me as incredibly un-Wes-like. Having said that, I haven't seen... I need to check, but I don't think he's withdrawn it. But I'm looking forward to chatting to him about it, because the Wes that I know is not really very divisive, a particularly divisive character when it comes to
That's just a ridiculous thing to say, though, isn't it?
Of course it is.
That's a ridiculous thing to say. So everyone who votes for Susan Hall is somehow a white supremacist. OK, what about the ethnic minority people of all backgrounds who may stick their cross in the Conservative box? I mean, is Sean Bailey, who presumably has voted for Susan Hall, is he a white supremacist now? I mean, it is
Emily,
gutter
I know
politics.
you want to have a fight with me. I agree with you.
You agree?
Yes,
but you're
bananas.
disappointed and I'm horrified.
Well, it takes two parents to do it properly.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Both sides of parenting will be on display in that West Streeting interview.
I mean, how can you talk about dangerous and divisive politics and then use those kind of words to describe Susan Hall? I mean, let us know what you think. GBnews, gbnews.com/your say is how you get in touch with us. I just think this is, student union politics. If you just chuck these words around, like white supremacist and all this, they lose their meaning, don't they, Gloria?
Oh, it's 14:03. We're going to be continuing this, even though she wants a fight, but we do actually agree with each other. First, it is time for the news with Sophia Wenzel.
Thank you, Gloria. Good afternoon. It's 2:02. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says the local election results have been disappointing after Labour made significant gains. It comes after Labour also won the by-election in Blackpool South. Labour's Chris Webb took the seat, beating Conservative David Jones in second, following a by-election caused by the resignation of Tory Scott Benton. Rishi Sunak accepted that the results were less than ideal.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda.
The Reform UK candidate, Mark Butcher, came third, just 117 votes behind the Conservatives. Reform Party leader Richard Tice told GB News the party is making huge strides.
Succeeded with our best ever by-election result by some margin, significantly ahead of our national polling average. Many people in the media have now got egg on their face. They said we couldn't do it. We were a virtual party. Well, we've just proven them completely and utterly wrong.
Labour's local election gains across England and Wales include winning in key areas such as Rushmore and Hampshire for the first time. Labour also won Thurrock and Hartlepool, but the Tories held Harlow. Conservative Ben Houchen has been re-elected as Tee Valley Mayor, but with a reduced majority over Labour. In Darlington, he polled 4,000 votes, more than Labour's Chris McEwen. Lord Houchen has already won more votes in Hartlepool, Redcar and Middlesbrough, with just Stockton still to be announced.
I am absolutely humbled by everybody that voted for me. Teesside is a place where I was born, I grew up, other than a very short sabbatical to Newcastle for 4 years, and then I came straight back. It's a place where I am going to be for the rest of my life. And to be re-elected for a third term in my home, in my community, is absolutely the greatest honour that anybody could ever give me. So I want to thank anybody that voted for me.
And in other news, a High Court judge has ruled that the government's climate plan is unlawful. Several environmental charities took joint legal action against the government, saying the strategy ignored the risk of missing targets. In his judgment, Mr Justice Sheldon ruled the government's plan was not justified by the evidence. Ireland's Prime Minister has played down a row over migration with the UK government on his first official visit to Northern Ireland as Taoiseach. It comes after Rishi Sunak offered Ireland the chance to join the Rwanda deportation scheme, rejecting Ireland's demands to take back asylum seekers who had crossed from the north. But speaking after a meeting with the First and Deputy First Ministers of Stormont, Simon Harris was quick to calm tensions.
There's a need for a sense of calm here. there's a need for a bit of a deep breath. We have a common travel area between the two islands. That's a common travel area that's in place for a very long time, when both countries were in the European Union, and it's still in place now when one country is within the European Union and another isn't. And I'm determined to work as Taoiseach constructively to make sure that the common travel area is protected, that the common travel area is never abused.
And Defence Secretary Grant Shapps and senior military leaders have been sanctioned by the Iranian regime. 2 Royal Navy commanders who captained warships involved in shooting down Houthi rebel drones and missiles in the Red Sea are included in the list. One of them, Commander Peter Evans, is currently stationed in the Red Sea at the helm of HMS Diamond. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sophia. Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. It's 2:08.
The declaration for East Midlands Mayor. It's a new position and it is imminent. Joining us now is GB News reporter Will Hollis, who can, hopefully, give us a sneak preview. Tell us about the atmosphere in that count, Will.
Yes, well, the good news, I suppose, when you're waiting for an election declaration is when people stop counting, which has largely happened here in Nottingham. The bad news, I suppose, is that this is 17 different local authority areas that is making up the East Midlands Combined County Authority from across Nottinghamshire, where we are today, and also neighbouring Derbyshire. So we are going to be waiting for all of those declarations to come into this central point before we know who has been elected for the very first time as the brand new regional mayor here in the East Midlands. For a long time, this part of the Midlands has been shouting about underfunding and underrepresentation. They often look at what's happened in the West Midlands, in places in the north, in metro areas, as well as in London, and say, why can't we have that? In fact, somebody is just starting to speak now. Ultimately, what it's about is about bringing powers to the local area, transport and the local economy in particular. The word that we're hearing on the ground from Labour sources is that Labour thinks they've clinched it for the candidate Claire Ward, but we are still waiting. And while we were expecting the declaration to happen any minute now, it seems like it will surely be at least another hour before we know who will be taking that position as the East Midlands' very first mayor.
Well, that's Labour are looking in a strong position. There's no result until there's result. But those are the rumours on social media that Labour think they are going to comfortably win. Are you hearing that?
Yes, well, that seems to be what we're hearing. It's the rumours on the ground as well as online as well. Labour is incredibly confident, as they have been going into many of these different elections, particularly going into places like Blackpool, where they won a landslide. Now, the real test here is looking at what happens, particularly in the smaller local authorities, where independent candidates and newer parties like the Reform Party might traditionally do very well, including in places like Ashfield, where until very recently they had a Conservative MP. Now they have, of course, Lee Anderson, a Reform MP. So what happens at the East Midlands regional level won't necessarily dictate what might happen in those smaller local authorities, where often people feel disassociated with the main parties and disassociated with politics.
Very interesting indeed, Will. Please do bring us any updates as you get them. Just very quickly, what do we know about Claire Ward, the Labour candidate? We get to hear whether she's won or not, but it looks very likely. I'm just having a look at her Twitter. Lots about creating jobs, lots about apprenticeships and new roads and transport and all this. She's thanking support from the trade unions too.
Yes, well, Claire Ward has a long history in politics, going back more than 20 years. She held a place in Tony Blair's government, and sorry, it's just gone a little bit quiet here as well. She held a place in Tony Blair's government as the MP for Watford, and then she took some time out. Right now, what she's been doing is she's been working as the chair of the local hospital, the Sherwood Forest Hospital Trust. But a lot of Labour candidates do rely on the support of trade unions, and I imagine it's probably very similar for Claire Ward, and that connection is something that she probably wants to bring to the East Midlands.
And how can you tell anything of any body language from Ben Bradley's team, the Conservative candidate? He's also the Member of Parliament for Mansfield since 2015, I think. So
yes.
Can you get any body language from the Tory team in there?
Yes, well, the interesting thing about Ben Bradley is he was the original Red Wall MP going blue. Before 2019, it was, I think, 2017, that Labour in Mansfield, a traditional coal mining town, went to the Labour Party for the very first time. He's not just an MP, he's also the county council leader for Nottinghamshire. His body language wasn't necessarily one that exuded excitement. One of the other journalists here said that when asked how things were going, how he was feeling, it was a shrug and a mare that the journalist received from Ben Bradley. We are waiting to speak to Ben Bradley, but while a lot of the other candidates, including the Liberal Democrats, including the Green Party, as well as the independent candidate for Ashfield, have had a chance to come up here and speak to the press and speak to me in particular, we're still waiting to hear from Ben Bradley, the Conservative candidate, as well as the likely front-runner, Claire Ward, the Labour candidate.
Well, thank you very much indeed. We'll come back to you when that vote is announced, hopefully very soon. Indeed, GB News reporter Will Hollis there at the count. From a nice little viewing point there, he can see everything that's going on. Ben Bradley, he's popular among the Conservative Party faithful.
Yes,
he's got
indeed,
a spark
and
to him.
Was. So I represented the seat next to Mansfield, and yeah, it went before 2019, Tory. So that Mansfield had been Labour, former coal mining community, had been Labour for as long as it had existed, but that was an early sort of abandoner of the Labour Party in Mansfield, and Ben has been the beneficiary of that. Is this a turning point? Is the fact that Labour looks likely to win the East Midlands Mayor? Could the Labour Party's fortunes be turning round? Because, my goodness, were they bleak in 2019?
Yes, and I asked Will what he knows about Claire Ward, the Labour candidate there, but you must know a lot about her.
Yeah, I've not... Gosh, this is so sad. I was in student politics, so I knew her a bit from Labour. I know. Why was I doing something normal? But, yeah, I've known... she's not very close to me, but I've known her
Labour sticker
for a long time. I'm just tragic.
No, it's good. It's good. You know, we always talk about how young people should be engaged in politics, so why not?
They should be down the pub instead.
Yeah.
Let's see if our next guest had a wasted youth in the Tory party, because she's been a very vocal Conservative since her election when she beat Ed Balls, in fact.
Yes.
It is, we're delighted to say, former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. So,
hi there.
Andrea, good to see you and thank you for your time, as ever. You've been a bit of a thorn in the side of your leader, Rishi Sunak. Is it time now to bury the hatchet? You're a maximum 6 months away from a general election. Does every Tory MP just have to get behind Rishi and do what you can? You haven't had a terrible night.
Look, I wrote an article for a national newspaper today. I don't think that MPs are going to follow suit and put letters in like Clark and I did. So I've said we need a major cabinet reshuffle where we bring together all factions of the party. I'd like to see Boris brought back so he has a lead role in the election campaign and even goes for a seat in the next election. And I think it's time to see the Conservatives coming together, because the threat of a Labour government now is getting too real. But I also think we actually need to examine the results as well. I mean, look at the by-election result in Blackpool. Look at the turnout. It was pretty shocking.
Oh, Andrea, have we lost you? We'll pick that up again because I want to find out if Andrea regrets being so vocal in her opposition towards Rishi Sunak, whether she's genuinely changed her mind at all, or whether it's just a kind of crisis management.
Well, I think she's doing the. I think the only option, the only game in town. Please, I'd love to hear from you at home, particularly if you're a supporter of the Tories. But if I were in your shoes, I would just sort of crack on, get behind the leader, and just try and turn all the heat onto Labour. We're not infallible. At all. We've got loads of questions that needs to be...
Do you know what, Gloria? That is a very, very good point. The Conservatives have not been in fighting mode at all. There are so many things they could go at Labour with, particularly when they promise, big spend, and then they decide to backtrack on it.
Andrea's back.
Oh, Andrea's back! Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
So you want to bring Boris Johnson back, you were saying? You want a big cabinet reshuffle?
And I was also saying about looking at the by-election results.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We lost 13,000 voters who stayed at home. Labour lost 2,000. They lost 2,000 votes, and Reform only gained 1,000. So they are not becoming the second party Reform. We're seeing that the vote split, but what we're actually seeing massively is that people are full stop across the board are fed up of politicians. There's so much apathy. I think we need true common sense conservatism and re-engage the electorate again. I think Rishi's got to be radical now and bring across
Rishi
conservatives.
Sunak, that's probably wishful thinking from on your part. I mean, Rishi Sunak, he doesn't scream radical, does he? He doesn't scream radical.
No. Exactly. This is why I wrote this article. I was writing it at 2 o'clock this morning, which I submitted to a newspaper, because I just think it's, as I said, we're staring down the barrel of a gun now. And to me, Labour are two sides of the same coin as the SNP. Their views, I mean, look at Wes Streeting's tweet. That was appalling. I heard you both ladies discussing it earlier, but I think that's a true view of what the Labour Party think of Conservatives, because let's face it, they may put flags on everything, but they actually look down on the voters in the Red Wall who are patriotic. That is a true sense of the word with the Labour Party.
Do you think there's any chance that you could win the next election?
I think the only way we'd win, I mean, let me just talk briefly about my canvass returns in the Red Wall seat. I mean, I know your colleague said Ben Bradley was one of the first Red Wall seats, but it was actually Estimate Vane in 2010, myself against Ed Balls in 2015, and Ben was in 2017. So, we've all been sort of like fighting in the Red Wall seats for quite a while now. Now, my canvass returns are showing a third Labour, a third Conservative, and 40% undecided. So very much like we're seeing across the board, low turnout. So I think that this is about giving a bloody nose to the party and a warning shot. And I just think that I don't think it's game over. We've got to, as I said, unite the party, bring Boris back. And I mean, I'd like to see us, work with Nigel.
I mean, Andrea, forgive me, but you sound a tad deflated. Not perhaps your usual self. I think we spoke a little while ago when you were saying Rishi Sunak needs to go. We need to shake things up massively. Now you're sort of, tempering yourself.
No,
have you given up really?
No, I'm not. It's not about giving up. I'm shattered. I've had 2 hours sleep.
Can I just one supplementary?
I've done 4 interviews today, so I think that's what it is.
Andrea, just one very quick supplementary, if I may. Just something I just want to pick up on something you said. We should be working with Nigel. In what way? Yeah. How do you mean?
Oh, come on. I think the right need to unite. Common sense conservatism has got to unite, because there's no appetite for Starmer, despite what people say. He is likely to get in by default because of low turnout and apathy. And that's not great for our country. Let's bring together the right. Let's save our country from the socialists. That's what I would like to see.
Well, Nigel Farage, we were talking about a potential reform hostile takeover of the Conservative Party. Who knows what could happen, what allegiances there could be. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew Jenkins.
Pleasure.
Really great to speak to you. Very good. We've got some breaking news.
Yes, we can reveal that Labour's Kim McGuinness has won the North East mayoralty. So this was the second time that this has been contested. She defeated the former Labour-turned-independent mayor, Jamie Driscoll, who Keir Starmer stopped from standing as the Labour candidate believed he was too left-wing. But I think he gave her a reasonable run for her, the official Labour candidate, a reasonable run for her money. But
Very
she's won.
Interesting. Labour. Another win for Labour. Kim McGuinness, North East Mayor. Mayor for the
So
North
I suppose
East.
they just retain that. It's not a win, is it? They hold.
They hold. They hold. But good news for Keir Starmer's party. Of course it is. We were expecting it, though, weren't we? We were expecting it.
I'm actually looking forward to seeing the breakdown of the results, because the poll said it would be quite close.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we'll have that information by the time you come back, we come back after this short break.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Children's stories like Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland now come with a trigger warning at universities, alerting readers to possible themes of white supremacy.
Yes,
quote,
these
unquote.
warnings are being applied to colonial narratives. That's the claim, commonly found in adventure stories and famous novels from the Victorian era. Well, joining us now is the actor Charlie Lawson. And Charlie, these warnings have been applied to Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. What's this university getting at?
Well, look, first of all, this is nothing new. We hadn't heard about it for a while. Universities have been doing this over the last couple of years. I remember having a chat with one of your colleagues. But when Gabriella, the lovely Gabby, phoned me up today, I had to beg her to put me on after 9 o'clock because I found myself getting rather irate about the whole thing. But I will do my best to be very polite.
Yes, keep it clean.
Yes, look, which is quite difficult for me, as you'll appreciate, over this subject. Look, this is universities just jumping on the same trying to be relevant bandwagon. Is it any wonder that we look at the quality of graduates from university, and in my humble opinion, some of them are slightly disappointing. But I did phone a couple of people I knew who had sons and daughters at various leading universities, and they had been speaking this morning. And thank the Lord, they think it's a complete load of bloody nonsense, as I do. Give the C.S. Lewis Centre a ring in East Belfast, because that's where your man came from. And I think you'll find you'll get short shrift, because we're not all about that in East Belfast. We don't censor anything.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Yes, right, it's 2:26 and we're going to cross live immediately to York and North Yorkshire for the mayoral result. There we go.
Cunliffe Lister, Felicity Clare, Liberal Democrat, 30,867. Duncan Keane Charles, the Conservative Party candidate, 51,967. Foster Kevin, the Green Party candidate, 15,188. Haslam Stephen Paul, commonly known as Haslam Paul, Independent, 12,370. Scaith, David Robert, commonly known as Scaith David, Labour and Cooperative Party, 66,000. So that figure is 66,761. Tordoff, Keith Graham, Independent, 13,250. I hereby declare that Scaith David Robert, commonly known as Scaith David, is duly elected to the Mayor of North Yorkshire and York. Before I invite the winning candidate to come and address the hall, could I just take a moment to thank my team and my staff for the work that they've done throughout the day, and for everybody for your attendance and extremely good behaviour throughout the day as well. So could I invite the winning candidate, David Scaith, to join.
Thank you, everyone. Just want to say a huge thank you to all the counting staff, everyone who's worked on this election. There's obviously been loads of work today here and in Harrogate, which is where I'm from, which is really nice to be here, to be in the place where I was born, but right across the region. So thank you very much to everyone who's worked on it, and for security and police for keeping us all safe in this building here today as well. Thank you, everyone who supported me throughout this entire campaign. We've had hundreds of people going out on a daily basis right across York and North Yorkshire, and I thank every single one of you. My wife Alice and my two children, who are in school at the minute, so I'll probably give them a call in a minute to let them know how it's gone, which I'm sure they'll probably want to come home. And all my amazing staff, Grace, Harry, Scott, Pete, Claire, everyone who's here, been absolutely amazing, so thank you every single one of you. My agent Janice, without Janice, I wouldn't have done any of the paperwork or admin or anything, so I can't see where she is, but she's over there. Thank you so much. All the volunteers right across the region, from Skipton, Scarborough, Richmond, Selby, York, Ripon, Whitby, Harrogate, Knaresborough, Northallerton, Tadcaster, everywhere, teams in Selby, everywhere, they've been absolutely amazing. As I say, someone who grew up in this town and has her own business and has my family in this region, I want it to be the region that I can grow up in, my children can grow up in, we can all have a fantastic, prosperous region. I think we've got a great opportunity to bring York and North Yorkshire together and really grow as one, collectively. I think the message is clear from York and North Yorkshire and across the country that we want change. I believe with the Labour Party and under Keir Starmer we have huge potential for this, and I hope this continues, and thank you everyone for your support. Thank you.
Well, there you go. The winning candidate there, Labour.
Yeah, the Labour Party will be really pleased with that result. They will be able to do some immature or mature mocking, depending on what side of the political divide that you are in, because that mayoralty contains Rishi Sunak, the Conservative Prime Minister's constituency of Richmond.
So he's ruled by a Labour mayor now. Scaith David Robert is the name. And he won 66,000 or so votes. Conservatives on 51,967. But as Gloria says, the Conservatives probably should have won that.
Yeah.
If it were normal times. But as we're seeing, they're losing Not everywhere, but a lot of places.
No incumbency there, which is it's the first time that there's been an election there. Right, it's 14:31. It's time for your news.
Good afternoon, it's 2:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. First, we start with some breaking news. A teenager who stabbed 16-year-old Mikey Roynan to death with a large hunting-style knife at a birthday party in Bath has been detained for life. He's been ordered to serve a minimum term of 16 years. Labour's Kim McGuinness has won the North East mayoralty, defeating former Labour-turned-independent Jamie Driscoll. Meanwhile, Conservative Ben Houchen has been re-elected as Tees Valley Mayor, but with a reduced majority over Labour. In Darlington, he polled 4,000 votes, more than Labour's Chris McEwen. Lord Houchen has already won more votes in Hartlepool, Redcar and Middlesbrough, with just Stockton still to be announced. The Prime Minister says the local election results have been disappointing after Labour made significant gains. It comes after Labour also won the by-election in Blackpool South. Labour's Chris Webb took the seat, beating Conservative David Jones in second, following a by-election caused by the resignation of Tory Scott Benton. Rishi Sunak accepted that the results were less than ideal.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda.
Labour's local election gains across England and Wales include winning in key areas such as Rushmore in Hampshire for the first time. Labour also won Thurrock and Hartlepool, but the Tories held Harlow. In other news, a High Court judge has ruled that the government's climate plan is unlawful. Several environmental charities took joint legal action against the government, saying the strategy ignored the risk of missing targets. In his judgment, Mr Justice Sheldon ruled the government's plan was not justified by the evidence. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mishmash again today. Lots of places grey with some heavy rain around, but it's a brighter day in the south and it's another mostly fine day across northern Scotland. In between, though, low pressure and weather fronts are providing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Some heavy downpours across parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, extending into the North Midlands. The odd rumble of thunder, maybe further north as well, parts of northwest England, southwest Scotland. But for much of northern Scotland, central Scotland, dry and fine. Warmest spot likely to be western Scotland, where we could get 22, 23 degrees. Elsewhere, a lot cooler with the cloud and the rain over these central areas, particularly chilly on some North Sea coast. But it is a brighter day across southernmost parts of England. Better chance of staying fine and dry here. And that dry, clearer weather will spread north as we go through the night. We'll keep outbreaks of rain going over much of Wales, the Midlands and northern England, parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland too. That northwestern corner staying dry and fine. With the cloud, that keeps the temperatures up in double digits. Quite a chilly start then to the long weekend in the south, but hopeful for a bit of sunshine here. Actually, generally, fine day tomorrow over South Wales, southern England and East Anglia. Drying up process over northern England and the Midlands too. But a grey day for much of the north. Some rain, although nothing too heavy. Again, the Highlands of Scotland doing OK for some sunny spells and temperatures here in the high teens, but cooler where it stays fairly dull. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M90 northbound in Perth and Kinross at junction 12, the Broxton roundabout. Estimated travel time there around 15 minutes. We're seeing queues on the M5 southbound in Gloucestershire. There's a lane closed for a broken down vehicle between junction 14 Thornbury and 15 the Almesbury interchange. Queues on the M1 in Bedfordshire southbound. There's a lane closed for a broken down vehicle at junction 11A Dunstable. And northbound there's still queues after an earlier broken down vehicle between junction 12 Flitwick and 13 for Bedford, although all lanes have reopened there. The usual slow traffic for the M5 northbound in the West Midlands between Junction 1 West Bromwich and Junction 8 of the M6. And it's slow on the M4 in South Wales, firstly in both directions up to Junction 41 Baglan, and then again eastbound near Newport between Junction 28 Tredegar Park and 26 Malpas Road.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Labour's David Scaife has won the York and North Yorkshire mayoral election. Labour's Kim McGuinness has won the North East mayoralty, defeating former Labour-turned independent Jamie Driscoll. We are awaiting a declaration from the East Midlands, but Labour are claiming they're going to be victorious there. So
it looks like we're going to have lots of new Labour mayors, by the sounds of things.
And a fair few surviving Conservative.
Clinging on. Ben Houchen, clinging on. He did reasonably well.
And perhaps Andy Street tomorrow. And who knows whether London will result in an upset.
Well, actually, I'm glad you said that, because it's quite interesting. Lots of people saying that, actually, Susan Hall might actually win the London mayor. I mean, that would be quite something. That would be quite something. I mean, Steve Khan's had 2 terms. He's running for his 3rd. There is no cap on the amount of terms you can have. Anyway, should we speak to GB News presenter Alistair Stewart, who is with us? Alistair, these latest results, the mayoral elections.
Like you, desperately waiting for London and West Midlands. Just to pick up what Gloria was saying there about the North East and Kim McGuinness winning, and Jamie Driscoll, who was a former mayor in that neck of the woods, fell out with HQ, as it were, and they wouldn't back him. So he stood as an independent. So it was one of those little, almost a diary piece where that is an important and significant victory for Keir Starmer in the sense that he was able to see the woman that he did support win through against an independent who he didn't support, who nevertheless stood there and decided to go it alone. I've also been sitting out there in between listening to you, but looking at the other results that are trickling through, because it really is a very busy 48 hours still to come, apart from the mayoral elections. And there's a couple that I pick out particularly. Another pat on the back for Keir Starmer, with Labour winning Hyndburn from no overall control, a traditional marginal seat there. And that was quite significant. Castle Point, however, and you may think I'm boring for England on Essex,
Never.
but if you've been doing elections for as long as I have, you know that Essex area of Castle Point and Harlem, places like that, are really important. Labour didn't succeed there. The independents did very well, and the Tories failed to take 1 councillor seat there. So there's still a lot there. If you really want to know what's going to happen at the general election, then those other results that are trickling through, like Hyndburn, like Castle Point, are worth looking at as well, because only they complete the jigsaw puzzle that will have to be completed either by Rishi Sunak or by Keir Starmer, or a combination thereof, come the general election in the next couple of months.
Alistair, why is that area of Essex so important then? Tell us.
Why?
Why is the area you were talking about, Castle Point and Essex area, so important?
Partly because economically they're important, and you've got places like Dagenham there, which used to be very important with the Ford Motor Company. But it's the demography of it. People are more likely to change their minds. They're not the sort of dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporters in the north and the north east, where they used to say tongue-in-cheek, and Gloria will remember this some constituencies where they don't bother counting the Labour vote, they weigh it, and that will give you the net result. And ditto for the Conservatives in the green and leafy suburbs, where we've seen a little bit of movement there as well. It's really just a question of looking at what is the marginal propensity of people to say, no, it is time for a change, I'm going to have another go. And those are seats like in North London and in Essex and along the northern banks of the Thames, where traditionally people have been willing to change their mind and determine the result of the election. And as I said earlier on this morning, a place like Hendon are crucial because they're bellwether seats as well. They tell you what the outcome of the general election is likely to be.
Alistair, can I get a bit more of your wisdom? Because, you know, you look at these opinion polls and it suggests that Labour's going to win this massive landslide come that general election. But here's the thing. I get that the Tories are really unpopular, but I don't feel, and you mentioned it earlier, you know, I lived through 97, I felt sort of that massive mood towards Labour. I don't feel that same mood now. Do parties really get landslides when you're not completely loved?
I don't have that feeling either. I share your... it's not pessimism, it's realism. Because I think that I remember you and I talking about it, and also a mutual friend, people like Tracy Crouch, who was on the other side of the political equation, a wonderful woman who's a Tory MP in North Kent. You just sometimes sense that that's the way it's going to go, and it is going to be big. And I remember talking to a number of Tories before David Cameron got his overall majority. I did sense that. I did feel that people did want a change and that Cameron was likely to go from coalition to a majority, and he did, albeit, I think, 20 or something like that. So it's the political equivalent of doing that. And it ain't blowing that hard for Labour at the moment yet. If they took Hyndburn, if they took Castle Point, it would be.
Well, there you go, Alistair. Sorry to rush you there. We've got to take a very quick break, but we'll be back with more analysis in just one tick.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Offline and overlooked. That's what Age UK say millions of British pensioners are. Why? Because they cannot or won't access the internet. It's leading to digital exclusion. So the charity's campaigning for public services like banks, utilities and even the NHS to maintain a more human approach.
Everything's online. People assume you've got a smartphone with a mobile number and an email, and without that you don't exist in this world anymore. We've got to try and get the government to see that it's so important to make people feel that they belong, because there's a feeling that the older generation just feel that they're forgotten, they're in the way, and we already know that anyway, but it's just another reason for them to feel that they're not wanted. They'll just accept it and they'll say, well, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And that's it, whereas other people would be really kicking and screaming. So we need to be the voice for older people.
Despite digital technology playing an increasing role in our lives, around 1 in 5 over 65s in the UK don't use the internet. Thornycroft Centre in Pontefract, West Yorkshire provides a space for this age group to socialise and get help to go online.
I'm not that good with mobiles, so when you mention anything about online, I ain't a clue what you're talking about.
The closure of thousands of banks is also detrimental to the older generation.
A lot of our members what come, they tend to use cash. They don't like to use bank cards. I think a lot of it's trust or the lack of knowledge. They don't understand how it works. I think they're very vulnerable as well with online. It's really important that they're aware how to use it and how to use it safely.
So, in an online era, it's still crucial for many to have an offline option.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 2:47 and we're going to speak to the founder of Electoral Calculus, Martin Baxter. Martin, we've had a few more results since we last spoke. A few of the mayors have been announced. What's your take?
Well, the North Yorkshire one was particularly interesting, wasn't it? Because that is traditionally Conservative heartland territory, places like Harrogate, Richmond, Rishi Sunak's own seat, and now it's been taken by Labour. So the Labour boots on the ground are very much on Rishi Sunak's own turf. So that confirms the story overall that Labour are up and the Conservatives are down. But I'd like to look a little more at the details of that, because it's not as simple as just voters switching directly from Conservative to Labour. What we're seeing in the people we ask in the polls is that although a few people have moved from voting Conservative last time to voting Labour now, many more have gone from Conservative to Reform, and also there's a large chunk of former Conservative voters who plan not to vote at all. They're disillusioned. And on the Labour side, people who did not vote last time, perhaps because they were worried about Jeremy Corbyn, are planning to vote Labour. So it's not just a story of Conservative to Labour switching. It's more that the Labour vote is consolidating on the left, and the right of centre vote is splitting, and some of it is staying at home. But the Conservatives are in trouble in many ways, and I think the North Yorkshire result shows that even in Conservative rural England, they are in trouble.
OK, Martin Baxter, we're coming to the end of our hour, but thank you for all your analysis so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Now, it has been a great local election night for the Labour Party, a win in Blackpool, lots of gains in the local elections. Well, joining us now to discuss his party's performance is Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting. Wes, thank you very much indeed for joining me and Gloria this afternoon. I'll let you give your take on what we've seen.
But so far, we've seen some really encouraging results across the country that I think reflect the fact the country is crying out for change, feel really let down by the Conservatives, and are increasingly able to put their confidence and trust in the Labour Party, because we've changed as a party under Keir's leadership. And I think particularly about the Hartlepool result, where we now lead the council with a majority, and yet only a few years ago, voters in Hartlepool sent us a direct and blunt message that unless we bucked our ideas up, we weren't going to get the support of people who'd been Labour through thick and thin over many years. And to Keir's credit, he took that result on the chin and used the result of the Hartlepool by-election to carry that message to the whole Labour Party to get the change that we needed to bring the Labour Party back to its roots, back to the service of working people across the country. And that's why I think we've seen that remarkable result in Blackpool South, where voters had a chance to send a direct message to Rishi Sunak with a third biggest swing since 1945 in a by-election, and the best result Labour's had. But you think right across the country, actually, you mentioned quite a few North of England results there. Look down in Aldershot at the Rushmore Council, where, home of the British Army, been Conservative for years, but lots
Wes,
of decent
I'm gonna just because
put their confidence in Labour now.
Wes, you're doing a very, very good job of saying what a fantastic night it was, but we haven't got that much time with you, and we're delighted that you're with us.
There are so many good results to mention, Gloria. Sorry about that.
Are there any lessons you want to learn from last night? Is there anything that you've thought, need to watch that? Or is everything tickety-boo and the curtains are being measured up for number 10?
Well, we would never, ever be complacent to measure up the curtains for number 10. There are some places where we didn't do as well as we would have liked, or we fell back, or people voted for smaller parties. We're going to take the same approach that we have done for the last 4 years, which is to listen, learn, and work hard to earn those people's trust. Because I want people to go confidently into the next general election, voting for a Labour government to build the new homes we need, to get our NHS back on its feet and make sure it's fit for the future, sort out our economy and the cost of living crisis.
Wes, Wes, I must say that a lot of people were horrified by a recent tweet. You say the Labour Party has changed. You were talking about the London mayoral election, and you essentially suggested that anyone who votes for Susan Hall, the Conservative candidate, is a white supremacist and an Islamophobe. Do you take that back?
I absolutely was not suggesting that about Conservative voters.
Well, that's what it sounds.
I do not think that about Conservative voters, and that's not what I said.
We've got it here. You say a win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over. I mean, that is a ridiculous thing to say.
I wish it were. I'll just speak from the heart about this. Sadiq Khan, as the Mayor of London, the first Muslim Mayor of London we've had, has had an unprecedented level of abuse and requires an unprecedented level of security to keep him and his family safe, of a kind that Boris Johnson didn't need when he was mayor and Ken Livingstone didn't need when he was mayor. Now, if people don't like Sadiq, fair enough. If they don't want to vote for him because of his policies, fair enough. That's democracy. What we have seen, though, is just an absolutely horrendous level of racism directed at Sadiq and a lot of prejudice based on the fact that he's a Muslim and prejudice that he wouldn't have got if he wasn't a Muslim.
What's that got to do with the vote for Susan Hall, though?
Well, when the deputy chair of the Conservative Party suggested that Sadiq Khan was run by Islamists, Susan Hall didn't utter a word of condemnation. Susan Hall has also sought to stoke division during her campaign by suggesting that Jewish Londoners were scared of Sadiq Khan, even as the Board of Deputies of British Jews had to speak out to say, actually, we had a really good working relationship and Sadiq's work.
So you're suggesting that criticism of Sadiq Khan must be Islamophobic? I mean, that's just crazy
Absolutely
talk.
Not. No, absolutely not. And that's why I'm not suggesting it. And look, I've got my criticisms of Sadiq Khan. And, you know, take you, Les, for example. We did not see eye to eye on that issue. And there are differences of opinion we'll have. And there are plenty of people in my own constituency or across London who voted for Susan Hall and other candidates, haven't got a racist bone in their body. I'm not for a minute suggesting that anyone who voted for Susan Hall is a racist or a bigot. I am speaking directly to the fact that Susan Hall has, I think, stoked division and has failed to condemn the racism directed at her opponent. And I think that's appalling.
Wes, just final question. Is it possible that Sadiq Khan is in trouble tomorrow? I'm hearing some, you know, they're not well sourced, but some reports that Susan Hall may be doing better than many people assumed.
Well, we've always said this election would be close. Sadiq won by 5% last time round, and the Conservatives changed the voting system so that people can't do second preferences, and the Greens and the Lib Dems couldn't transfer to him. So we always warned it would be close, but we're not even counting yet. I think they're still doing the verification of all the ballots that have come in, so I think it's far too soon to tell. And I hope he is re-elected on his record, but we will have to wait and see. And look, I know he's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. People want to criticise him, slag him off, disagree. That's absolutely fine.
Thank you very much, Wes. We're going to have to leave it there because we're at the end of the show. But great to speak to you, Health Secretary.
I think, to be fair, he sort of withdrew quite a lot. OK.
We'll just see. We'll digest it. I'm sure Martin will. Up next. It's Martin Daubney.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For some, today felt like summer. For others, it still felt like February. And the mixed weather will continue through the long weekend. Dull and damp over many central areas today. Some heavy showers this evening over parts of southern Scotland and northern England. But it's in western Scotland where we've seen plenty of sunshine today. We'll keep the largely clear skies overnight, but also clearing skies developing further south. And that's going to allow it to turn quite chilly here. Temperatures not far off freezing in some rural spots, but the cloud and the outbreaks of rain over northern England, North Wales and Northern Ireland will keep the temperatures up here. It does make for a rather drab start to the long weekend. Rain on and off for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, North Wales through the day. Should be turning drier over northern England, a brighter day over the Midlands and East Anglia compared to today. One or two scattered showers in the southeast, but much of the south fine. And generally, again, a good chunk of western Scotland will be dry and bright. Not quite as warm as today, but still 16, 17, 18, perhaps 19 further south, but feeling cooler
obviously where it's cloudy. Still quite a bit of cloud across northern areas on Sunday, but maybe not as many showers. Some heavy ones perhaps developing across Scotland later on. Cloud increasing in the south, but many here dry and bright again on Sunday. Increasing chance of seeing some showers, particularly in the southwest later on. But again, with a bit of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. Temperatures getting close to 20 Celsius. Cool on some of these North Sea coasts. And so